Possible to show everything that's changed during the 21-year period. However, you can't fail to notice the changes over the years. Even before TVT-6 went to air to begin the first transmission of television in Tasmania, we had a special news service to air with the devastating floods in New Norfolk and Hobart. It was during April test transmissions, while viewers only had the static picture of a test card and music, that staff members Stan Draper and Peter Richmond loaded up an old Holden and set off to capture on film the first edition of TV News. The floods caused thousands of pounds damage to homes, a motel, and the business houses of Hobart, where the Hobart rivulet flooded, causing great damage in Liverpool and Elizabeth Streets. This is the original earthworks for the Cat and Fiddle Arcade. The crane doing the excavations became a victim and ingloriously sat as a depth gauge on the level of the rising waters. The esplanade area of the river at New Norfolk took the full brunt of the raging waters, and many people had to move to higher ground after their homes were flooded, roads washed away, and cars overturned. 1960 was the last year of what was a familiar sight around the city and suburbs, the tram. First installed in 1893 with a formidable network of track, Hobart's trams carried hundreds of thousands of people through 67 years of continuous operation. But it was a sad day when the thousands of people turned out to see the last tram run through the city out to Springfield, and at the controls was Dame Mabel Miller with the familiar cap driving into history. Later, back at the depot, with the power cut, the old tram is pushed to her final resting place with the aid of a motorised lorry. Now, 21 years later, Hobartians, many of them still wishing for the city to have the old iron horses rattling along the streets. 1960 was also the year of the commissioning of the Liarputa Power Station, a big day for the HEC with the official opening by the Premier Mr Rees, the Chief Justice Sir Stanley Burbury, and the HEC Commissioner Sir Alan Knight. Meanwhile, in Hobart, work was progressing on a new type of intersection, the railway roundabout. The work was hard and this old truck was straining to get its load out of the hole. Just opposite the railway roundabout, a new type of motel taking shape, the Travelodge. 1961 was the beginning of a good year for shipping for the state. The Marine Board begins construction for the Sydney to Hobart ferry terminal, the Bass Trader begins a regular service to Melbourne from northern ports, and the William Hollyman, a cargo container vessel, enters the Bass Strait trade.
London sent mainland agencies and their planes on the spot, but they couldn't land, and only Bill Mollison knew the exact location of the monster. Journey's end, and the hump of the sea monster rises above the sand. This was how it looked from our seaplane, which kept a watchful eye on the party. A long arrow drawn on the beach points to the monster's resting place, and Vern Reed is told that petrol awaits him at the hut at the mouth of the Pyman. From the air, you can get some idea of the immensity of the depth of the beach and its endless length. Bringing back specimens was quite a job. The toughened hide of the monster would only yield to the axe. Seabirds had worried the carcass, making little or no effect on it. And when cut, the flesh gave off a pungent odor, similar to ammonia or an overripe cheese. The monster caused so much interest that CSIRO officers were later flown in by helicopter. They brought out specimens and after tests announced they were of the opinion that the monster was whale blubber, but in some quarters the controversy still exists. Bill Mollison is of the opinion that there's been a great molecular change in the monster during the 2 years it's been lying on the beach. An unusual feature was hair on the hide. The specimens collected, the party started for home.
This was a big year for controversy raging over whether water supply should be fluoridated. Arguments swayed back and forth. However, state subsidies were eventually announced for municipal schemes.
Oh, I would say that more than 1/3 of the total population of America are now drinking fluoridated water.
And you don't feel that the minority in this country who are against fluoridation are going to have a stand eventually?
No, I don't think so. I think you're perfectly right when you refer to a minority. It is a very small minority.
Rolled out for the first time in 1962 was a small gadget that has been the centre of attention in courts and political debate for years, the breathalyzer. But Tasmanians were lucky. They didn't see it introduced until a few years later. State authorities were concerned with traffic problems, and in their wisdom, the speed limit was increased from 30 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour in built-up areas. Patronage, meanwhile, had dropped on the Transderwan ferries and eventually ceased operating. Our teaching hospitals received a boost with the recommendation by the Universities Commission for a medical school for the University of Tasmania. In the state's southwest, the federal government approves a grant of $5 million for construction of the road through to the Gorton River, and the embryo of the Lake Pedder controversy is born. During that same year, the Hydroelectric Commission imposes power cuts on industrial consumers.
Have you ever seen a kangaroo in its wild state? If so, you're probably among the minority of Australians. The kangaroo, like the koala and the wombat, is becoming rare. This despite the claims of farmers and other people interested in so-called crop protection and those who are interested in slaughter for the export trade. An overseas visitor recently wrote to the press expressing surprise that he found it hard to find a kangaroo, a wombat or a koala living in its natural state. The professor of zoology at Monash University, Professor Jock Marshall, recently said, "We Australians should wake up to ourselves. We've already killed off 6 furred species, and another 30 or 40 species are in danger. The present rate of slaughter is 10 million kangaroos a year. Now, surely no species can continue to live through this. I think that we Australians will live to rue the day that we allowed the wholesale murder of our wildlife."
During the early 60s, shipping was the lifeblood of the state, and with the launching of a brand new ship, Empress of Australia began a new phase, sailing regularly between Sydney and Hobart. While the Princess of Tasmania, or the Pot, as she was affectionately known, plied the Melbourne-Devonport run, the Empress became famous for her role of tripping between Hobart and Sydney with a cargo of cars, tourists and goods. Also launched in '64 was the seaway vessel Seaway King, and she was a welcome sight on her arrival in the Derwent. In fact, hundreds of people lined the wharves to watch the ship berth on her maiden voyage. Another big event waited upon eagerly by people on the eastern shore was the opening of the Tasman Bridge. For years, motorists had been using the unique Hobart floating bridge, but once the Tasman was open for traffic, the authorities wasted no time in dismantling the floating bridge and towing it upriver. So another link with our past moved into history, and a new era for development on the eastern shore. It was disastrous for Launceston. Huge floodwaters inundated many parts of the city and suburbs, causing hundreds of thousands of dollars damage. And a rare sight for visitors to the gorge, where hundreds of thousands of tons of water rushed down in raging torrents under the bridge and eventually out to sea. Ever since those days, Launceston has been appealing for special funds to install a special flood bypass scheme. TVT-6 extended their television coverage in 1965 to cover the west coast, and a translator station was constructed high on Mount Owen overlooking Queenstown, and for the first time, west coasters were able to get television. It was also during this period that Hobart began to experience, along with all other capital cities, concern for our involvement in Vietnam. There appeared to be no middle ground. In 1965, one was either for the war in Vietnam or against it, and marches through city streets seemed to be the order of the day.
Last night, Gillian Fenton, 21-year-old schoolteacher from King Island, was crowned Miss Tasmania. And we must say that she's a very charming Miss Tasmania. Last night, she was probably one of the most excited girls in Australia. Gillian, how does it feel this morning?
Well, I'm still terribly excited, and I haven't quite realised it, and I think it'll take me quite a time to realise it. Yes.
Now, Gillian, you come from King Island. How long have you lived on King Island?
I've lived there with my parents for about 11 years. And I went to school there, and then I came over here and had 2 years at college, and this is my second year back there teaching now.
Have you had many communications from them this morning yet?
Oh, I've had quite a few. I had a few phone calls, lots of messages sent, and quite a few telegrams, and they're all terribly excited.
Theatre goers were about to be given a choice in how they spent their leisure time.
Now, what made you select this site on the eastern shore?
Well, number one, we felt that the people of Hobart deserved a second drive-in theatre, and we felt that the eastern shore was where the next drive-in theatre should be built. We picked this particular site because of the most magnificent panoramic view which you'll have from this site, plus the fact that it's only 4 miles from the centre of Hobart and most accessible to everyone on the eastern shore as well as people from the other side of the river.
Now, have you experienced any difficulties in building this drive-in?
Yes, it's probably been one of the most difficult drive-in theatre construction in Australia, basically due to the fact that we've struck an enormous amount of rock on the site, and this has had to be blasted, and it has meant very extensive earthworks being entailed in its construction.
Australia's favourite royal, the Queen Mother, visited Hobart in company with a young Prince Charles, and thousands of people turned out to welcome them.
Dr. Bryden, director of the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery, there's been a proposition that Maria Island should be proclaimed a reserve. Doctor, would you like to comment on this?
Yes, the whole question of conservation is one that's been brought to the fore a good deal in the last year or two. The Duke of Edinburgh has led the band in Britain and in certain other parts of the world as well. In Australia here, the Australian Conservation Foundation has been set up, and we haven't been oblivious of the need for something similar in Tasmania. Now, if you're going to have something of this sort, it's a matter of finding a suitable area where you can conserve the types of animals that you particularly want to look after. And if you can restrict the area for certain particular purposes, it's all to the good. And an island proves absolutely ideal for that sort of thing.
Shortly, the breathalyzer is to be introduced into Tasmania. Superintendent Reid, when are breathalyzer tests going to be incorporated in the laws of this state?
March the 15th.
Can you tell us a little bit about the machine?
Well, the only thing it will register, of course, is the alcoholic contents in the blood. And this is a scheme that's now will be available on from the 15th of March that will indicate the quantity of alcohol concentration in a person's blood.
Are people going to be compelled to take the test?
Well, they may refuse. They will be told to take the test, but they may refuse, and there's a substantial penalty for not complying with the police officer's direction.
15 years ago, the federal government announced plans to upgrade the airport for jet travel, and we entered another new era.
50 minutes from Melbourne to Hobart. That's all it took today on the new DC9, which has been introduced by ANSA. The managing director of ANSA is Mr. R.M. Ansett. Mr. Ansett, what are your impressions now that you've travelled on this new aircraft?
I'm very pleased indeed. I think it's an ideal aircraft for what we term short-haul work. Melbourne-Hobart, Melbourne-Sydney, Melbourne-Adelaide, Sydney-Brisbane.
Sir, do you see this as the beginning of the end of piston engine aircraft? In other words, can you see jets on all the feeder routes?
The piston engine aircraft are practically gone now. There's none left. But in due course, the turboprop will go. That's like the Viscounts and the Electras. They're on their way out bit by bit too. Undoubtedly, we'll have an all-jet fleet as soon as we can find a suitable replacement for the Fokker Friendship, a jet replacement.
Mr. Ansett, this plane has a configuration of about 86 or a little bit over. Do you think this is too big for the Tasmanian run?
Yes, it can give us some problems at certain times of the year, but we'll rationalise it in some way. We'll make sure you get jet services down here between the two airlines. We might have to rationalise. We go one day and Tower the next, but you know we'll certainly keep one schedule operating like this one.
Mr. Ansett, because of the fast turnaround of these aircraft and the distance that they can travel, do you see this as a way of keeping airfares down?
Well, let us put it this way. This is a splendid piece of equipment economically, and it will certainly help us to stop airfares from going up anyway, or going up too far. But, you know, we're in the inflationary spiral like everybody else, and it's very hard to predict too far in advance. But this is a very economical piece of equipment.
We've come from the DC-3 right through to the DC-9. Where do we go from here?
Well, and as I say, these DC-9s will be with us for a long time, 15 years probably, even more. Now, we go now to the smaller aircraft with the 727s, the long range, short range, and then the small one, Fokker Friendship replacement.
Who will ever forget Black Tuesday, the 67 bushfires, when 62 people lost their lives, 1,000 homes destroyed, personal possessions lost, sheep, cattle and horses burned to death. On that day of the Holocaust, great walls of flame raced across paddocks, devouring everything before it, pushed along by hot northerly winds. In the forested areas, the inferno raced through trees at amazing speed, catching everyone by total surprise. It was a matter of days before the full effect of the fires was fully realised. There were staggering tales of heroism, the stories of the lucky ones, the grief of relatives who lost loved ones, and the reorganisation by the authorities to get help where it was needed most. Such was the will of the people that the first home rebuilt and occupied was only 18 days after the fire. Special appeals and grants were made to fire victims, and people started to rebuild their shattered lives. But it was a bad period for livestock. The state was going through its driest period for 127 years, and the fires cleaned up almost every piece of vegetation. Farmers were forced to kill thousands of lambs for want of fodder. TVT-6 began an appeal to homeowners to deposit any lawn clippings at various depots, and these were whisked quickly off to starving stock in the fire-ravaged areas around Hobart. The seriousness of the fires brought a visit to Tasmania by the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip. He was met on arrival at the airport by the Premier, Mr. Eric Rees, and then taken on a tour of the worst-affected areas. Prince Philip travelled through many towns and stopped and chatted with people who had lost their homes, and also quenched his thirst with a few of the locals along the way. It was also a bad year for the HEC. Water reserves were down to only 16% of capacity due to sustained drought in catchment areas. The state government decided to introduce daylight saving legislation to conserve power. It was also announced that there would be industrial power rationing with bulk supplies cut by 35% and domestic users forced to cut back by 20%.
The severity of rationing should be increased as far as bulk consumers are concerned. It will now be taken from 25 to 35% from the commencement of December. And there will be a further reassessment of the water storage position in February, and a public statement will then be made as to whether it is necessary to continue rationing at that level or whether it can be relieved in some way. At the same time, it's proposed to put on a formal basis a 20% rationing of domestic consumers. And all domestic consumers will be asked, and are now asked, to do all that they possibly can to save consumption of power in their homes, in their businesses, or in any other way that it may be used domestically.
After 10 years' endeavour, Mr. John Steer's bill for daylight saving appears certain to be accepted in the Legislative Council. It's already been passed in the House of Assembly. Mr. Steer, when is it to be debated in the Legislative Council?
The Legislative Council will be debating the bill tonight, and I would think that they would finish the debate tonight, and we will know tonight whether daylight saving will be law this summer or not in Tasmania.
Mr. Steer, in your travels around the state, what sort of acceptance has there been of the bill?
Well, I've always thought that a majority of people were in favour of daylight saving, but I've been quite surprised at the massive acceptance of daylight saving right throughout the state. It's most encouraging.
Apart from the power saving that this is going to mean to Tasmania, who's going to benefit most by daylight saving?
Well, everyone will benefit in some way or another, particularly those who are for recreational purposes. Health-wise, the extra sunshine and daylight that we're going to enjoy. And anyone who plays sport, anyone who has a garden, it'll give them time for doing it on the weekend. Everyone, I think, will get some benefit from it.
Mr. Neil McShane is an Avoca grazier. He was involved in the recent shoot in the north of the state, which reputedly killed 1,000 wallabies. Mr. McShane, you've been quoted as saying you would have liked to have seen 2,000 of these creatures killed.
That is quite true, Graham.
Would you qualify this?
Why? Why should I? Because it's necessary for the graziers to kill this pest. We've got nothing against wallabies. They're a lovable, interesting animal. They're part of our heritage and all the rest. But if we are going to farm, we must kill them and destroy them. And shooting is the quickest, most humane, the best possible way to do the job.
The criticism seems to be also that after the shoot it was a beer-up, barbecue and prize-giving for the number of animals that were shot.
No, that is not correct. That is an entirely wrong conception. Well, now, I like my glass of beer, and I've no doubt you do. But I didn't have a glass of beer. I talked to a lot of these boys, a good, healthy lot of Tasmanian sportsmen.
Thousands of spectators at the Royal Hobart Show were shocked when, in full view in the arena, a motorcyclist fell to his death from a high wire. TVT cameraman Carl Wiley was filming the sequence when the accident occurred. The film was rushed to every capital city television station in Australia, and it was also shown on Movietone News throughout picture theatres. The motorcyclist suffered massive injuries in the fall and died a short time later. His two assistants, who were left hanging on a platform, were brought down on attached wires after bales of hay were spread around on the ground where the motorcyclist was killed. In March of 1968, a horror accident on an oil rig in Bass Strait claimed a number of lives when a helicopter carrying newsmen crashed onto the deck with tail rotor failure. The whirling blades ploughed into the photographers and cameramen standing on the platform, causing horrible injuries.
We'd been out for about 5 minutes to take some long-distance shots of the rig, and we were just landing when the accident occurred. I don't know really what happened, but we were coming into land, and I think we were about 4 or 6 feet above the helicopter pad, and something happened to the tail section, and she started shaking, and in the period of about 3 or 4 shakes, the whole helicopter swung round and crashed side-on onto the deck. I didn't realise at the time that the tail rotor had ploughed into about a dozen men.
A young member of the House of Assembly went to bat in 1968 to start an appeal for Kevin Burridge to have the state's first kidney transplant.
Kevin Burridge has been seriously ill for a period of almost 5 years, during which he's been receiving continuous treatment for his kidney condition. This has had to be increased over the last 2 years, and especially over the last 6 months, where he's had to go to Melbourne and Sydney to receive treatment, and all this, as you would realise, has incurred an enormous amount of expense on the family, and it's because of this that Alderman David Shields of Glenorchy and myself have combined together to get an appeal going for him too.
In recent years in Australia, there's been an upsurge in teenage magazines. Up until now, Tasmania has never had its own teenage magazine, but Peter Cashman is one person who is trying to rectify this position. He's one of the editors of Trend, a newspaper for the new generation, or the now generation as they call it. Peter, what first gave you the idea to introduce this teenage magazine to Tasmania?
Well, Graham, when we were at matriculation college I should say, the two co-directors with myself, we were working on the Matric College newspaper Probe, and we thought when we left this, having left Matric College, we decided that we'd gained a lot of experience. We knew a lot about printing techniques. We knew what people wanted. We knew contacts and so on. We decided, well, we can't let this drop. Let's do something with it. So we decided, you know, that there's nothing around which really covers Tasmanian young adult interests. So tomorrow, Thursday, we have Trend.
Mr. C.P. Gable has just been appointed as State Fire Control Officer with the Rural Fires Board of Tasmania, and his appointment, I understand, takes effect from today, and he's just arrived in Hobart. Mr. Gable, does this appointment in fact take effect today?
Yes, which takes effect from today, the 14th of May.
And could I ask you when the appointment was originally made?
I'd be about a fortnight or 3 weeks ago since the initial appointment. And at that stage, I came down for a short visit, had a look around, and since been tying up affairs back in my hometown.
Yeah. Now, you have had an opportunity to assess part of the Tasmanian scene as far as the Rural Fires Board is concerned, or the situation?
Only very elementary, a quick look at the broad principles mainly, but not in detail at all.
The year of another state election and a new Premier, Mr Angus Bethune, resulting in 17 ALP, 17 Liberals and 1 Centre Party member, Mr Kevin Lyons, who combined with the Liberals to form a coalition government ending 35 years of Labor rule in the state. However, the relationship didn't last, and in 1972 Mr Lyons resigned his cabinet portfolios, ending the coalition and causing great concern in political circles.
Mr Lyons, why did you choose yesterday to bring down the government?
Well, Graham, I didn't choose yesterday to bring down the government at all. Put it this way, it so happened that yesterday was the day on which it naturally fell into place that the government should fall.
Did you know 5 months ago that the government would fall?
I told the Liberal Party 5 months ago I couldn't continue to serve under Mr Bethune.
What reasons did you give for not wanting to work any longer under Mr Bethune?
Well, I think I should refer to my speech to the Liberal Party at that time, and I haven't made it public. I may do so tomorrow, so I wouldn't like to comment.
You're not prepared to say any more except that you refuse to work with the Premier?
That's right, or serve under the premiership, yes.
Realising that this would probably cause a change of government in Tasmania?
No, I request a change of leadership in the Liberal Party. They chose not to do it. They knew the inevitable result, but that was their decision, and I don't blame them for it.
Do you think that the Liberal Party can lead the state after the next general election?
Well, they can, but whether they will depends on the electors.
Do you think they will?
Well, I don't want to prognosticate. I'll leave that to the electors.
Tasmania's hydroelectric undertakings are some of the largest in the world. Tasmania's population is comparatively small. For some time now, people on the island have been arguing that we don't need as much hydropower as we've got. Tonight, we're not going to discuss the pros and cons of hydropower, nor the hydroelectric developments in Tasmania. We're going to discuss Lake Pedder. Some 7 years ago, because of the need for more hydropower, the Hydroelectric Commission decided to dam the Serpentine River, thus flooding Lake Pedder. Lake Pedder is situated high in the mountains in the southwest corner of Tasmania. It's unique. Lake Pedder itself is a magnificent sight. The fight to save Lake Pedder has been lost. Shortly, the waters of the Serpentine River will bank up behind a dam that's been completed. Lake Pedder will be inundated. Lost will be the magnificent white beaches which stretch for miles around the foreshore. Lost will be the lake. The Hydroelectric Commission says that the result will be even more spectacular than what is currently here. But Lake Pedder is undoubtedly a wilderness area. It's one of the last wilderness areas accessible in Tasmania. For the last 2 years, conservationists and other people in Tasmania have been fighting to save Lake Pedder. Their fight has been futile.
Following years of planning and construction, Australia's first legal casino opened for business at Rest Point. The official opening was by the Premier of the day, Mr. Eric Rees, in company with Managing Director of Federal Pacific, Mr. John Haddad. For the government of the day, it wasn't easy making a firm decision for the establishment of a casino. There were many objections and a referendum that found in the government's favour.
In Tasmania today, young people made history. It was the first time that they could legally drink in bars, the people between the ages of 18 and 20. TVT did a survey and found out from most hoteliers that not many of the young people were taking the opportunity of drinking to the ages between 18 and 20. But at the Russell Roundabout Hotel of Mr. Verno Byrne, we found one such person, Terence Bone. Terence, is this the first time you've been in a bar?
Yes.
Do you think it's a good idea the age has now been reduced to 18 for young people to drink?
Yes, I reckon it is, because they're going to drink at any time, aren't they?
And do you think that many young people take the opportunity of drinking?
Oh, yes, they take opportunity, but they won't drink it inside because they get caught.
Have you been drinking before the age of 18, say at private functions and so forth?
Yes.
And do you think that you'll be making a regular visit to your local hotel?
I reckon I will.
Arguably, one of the greatest waste of public funds was the Mount Nelson campus of the TCAE. Throughout its short, turbulent history, staff and students never knew what was their future. From opening day until the dismantling, the college passed through one crisis after another. One of the most amazing stories of survival is being told in Hobart tonight. The survival and return of 7 of the men, or 7 of the 10 crewmen of the Blythe Star. After Australia's most intensive air and sea search for 10 days, which produced no sign of the missing ship or its crew, and lost hope by all but the closest relatives, 3 of the men turned up at Dunelly this afternoon. And soon the news of what almost seemed a miracle was being flashed round the country. The 3 men had walked from Deep Glen Bay, 5 miles north of Pirate Bay off Eaglehawk Neck, across rugged country to Madonna. Here they were picked up by a logging contractor and taken to the police station at Dunelly. From this point, the amazing story of survival took shape. How the Blythe Star had suddenly capsized and gone down 5 miles west of Southwest Cape at 8:30 on Saturday morning, October 13th, the day after she left Hobart for King Island. How the men existed almost without food on a life raft for 10 days. How they saw searching aircraft but couldn't make the searchers see them. How they came ashore after drifting helplessly and then could not get out of Deep Glen Bay for help. And tonight, remarkably fit considering their ordeal, the men are in Royal Hobart Hospital, the focus of Australia. I was at the domain when the helicopter brought them in.
Oh, not too bad.
Good. How did you...
You
want a hand?
Just find me feet, please.
You all right?
Yeah.
Can we get the stretchers over, please?
Can you tell us anything about what happened? Can you tell us a little bit about how it occurred?
Let this leading go.
All right.
Not just a present, we can't say it.
All right. Are you from the mainland or
I'm from Victoria.
Would you like to say hello to your family and just tell them that
I would like to say hello to my wife if I could.
Well, you don't look real good at the moment. How do you feel?
Crook.
Crook? Be good to get to hospital?
Yes, warm bed. Wasn't bad to see, they think. But somehow or other she got the list on to start, but we don't know what it was.
Is there any suggestion that, the cargo may have shifted or anything like that?
Well, it could have been down below decks, but not on top. Not on deck when she started to list, and then to start to go. Because the night before we left Hobart, we had it real chain down and bolted down.
And how long, was it just a matter of a few seconds or 5 minutes until she went over and
well,
down?
It's only a matter of, it's only a matter of, she was straight over on the starboard side, I'm sorry, and because everyone then, we couldn't get the lifeboats free, so the only thing we did was the RDF, the boats was able to get down with the RDF and loosen it, and we just piled it in that one after.
You were able to get out all right, the lot of you, were you?
Oh, yeah.
You didn't have any trouble with the boat? Did the ship completely capsize when you were in it?
Not while we're in it.
No.
No, but she was going all the time. She was right over the almost laying on a flat.
So you had a little bit of warning to try and get the lifeboats and the raft through.
Just a little, but the lifeboats were useless. We couldn't get them free in any case.
Was it a rough sea at the time?
Not so bad. The sea wasn't so bad then. But that night, that's when we felt
Was there a bit of panicking? And that's
there was no panic.
What time did it happen?
1:30 in the morning.
Did all 10 of you get onto the lifeboat?
All 10 got in my
Bad injuries?
No, just thrown in the sponge.
In the sponge?
Yeah, thrown in the sponge. No, none of them drowned. They just froze to death.
This is the whole point.
It was so cold, they just stripped off and just laid there in the open air and just died.
Just died?
Yeah.
Well, what actually kept you going?
Willpower.
This was another bad year for the Tasmanian Transport Commission.
Now the Straitsman lies at the bottom of the Yarra, probably 2 lives have been lost with her. The disaster was sudden. The man who shot this film was on another ship. He'd been filming Melbourne's skyline when his attention turned to the sight of the 1,000-ton ship, which had been moving up the Yarra, suddenly turning turtle. Men were clambering over her and screaming for help, and her cargo of sheep was spilling around her. After the ship had gone under, its outline could still faintly be seen from the air, only feet beneath the water, just left of the big tug, helping with rescue work. On board the Straitsman, there were 2,000 sheep. Their carcasses choked the Yarra, and others, not drowned, struggled in the oily water, while the rescue boat moved among them, dragging on board those it could. Some sheep even made their own way to shore. The 13 crew members of the 1,000-ton vessel had hardly any warning that the ship was going over. When a final count was taken, 10 were safe. They'd either swum ashore or had been picked up by rescuers.
The 5th of September 1974 will live long in the hearts of many people, when an explosion equal to that of a 1,000-pound bomb shattered the lives of many people at Mount St. Canis. The early news that day spelled out the disaster. 7 people dead, 18 in hospital, 40 people injured, and 4 critical. The explosion occurred when workmen were testing a new boiler in the laundry section of the Mount St. Canis convent. A continual stream of ambulances carried the injured to the Royal Hobart Hospital's casualty section, where a special civil disaster procedure was put into action. At the same time, scores of policemen and emergency personnel helped contractors comb the debris for survivors. Heavy machinery, chainsaws and cutting equipment were used to clear tons of rubble from the devastated brick building. 2 priests, Father O'Brien and Father Purcell, helped push away the bricks and timber and gave absolution to the seriously injured. The power of the explosion shattered windows and surrounding streets and was felt in suburbs miles away on the opposite side of the Derwent. In Parliament, members observed a minute's silence for those killed in the blast.
All the stuff, we heard the bang first, and all this dust just came up, and all the smoke, and debris was flying everywhere,
Did you come straight up here,
We ran up here, there were 4 of us.
What did you see?
A couple of people down here bleeding, a little girl running around. I grabbed hold of her and calmed her down and got the ambulance, sent someone in the ambulance up, We carried a few of the poor buggers out.
I just looked up and saw the debris going, and it went up just like an atomic bomb.
How high?
Oh, crikey. I should imagine it anything up to a couple of 1,000 feet. My car's about 200 or 300 yards away, and that's all covered in debris, a whole lot of it. And my gang, the whole lot of it, we flew down and rescued the ones we could. We were the first here.
You came down here. How many people did you pull out?
Oh, we pulled out about 3.
Seriously hurt?
Oh, my word. Yeah, one poor lass was lost a purse and worried about her holidays, but, the shock was pretty great.
this question of tobacco tax, the consumer tax, started to get tangled up with the federal election campaign. And everybody seemed to be extremely eager to see that it was eliminated as far as Tasmania is concerned. Now, I wasn't prepared to discuss that because, firstly, it would have given perhaps to Tasmania a lump sum payment for 1 year, and that would have been just a deferment of our particular problems. But I hadn't forgotten that there'd been a discussion previously with both sides of politics about the possibility of withdrawing from the Grants Commission. And I said I was not prepared to discuss the question of the tobacco tax, but I was prepared to discuss a proposition for us to withdraw.
No one is ever likely to forget the disastrous consequences to the people and the city of Hobart when the bulk ore carrier Lake Illawarra rammed the Tasman Bridge, leaving a 128-metre gap and causing 12 deaths. It took quite a while for people to realise the impact of the loss of the Tasman Bridge. Our Prime Minister at the time, Mr Gough Whitlam, obviously shocked with the news, criticised the master of the vessel, Captain Pilk, but later apologised. No one had ever experienced such dislocation. Goods, transport, essential services, all had to be changed. Ferries were purchased, roads built, ambulance and fire services changed, hospital cases were brought across from the Eastern Shore in Army assault craft. People who had to travel on ferries waited in long queues. And for almost 3 years, there were regular fights with politicians and government departments on how and when the bridge would be repaired. The federal government gave a total of $44 million towards restoration work, approved a second bridge of Bailey-type construction, and eventually announced a second permanent bridge crossing at Dowsing's Point. In 1975, Tasmanian television viewers for the first time watched their favourite programmes in colour.
Manufacturers advise us that they anticipate approximately 600,000 for the first year. At a 3% state, Tasmania would look at about 18,000 sets.
The TV world was rocked and shocked by the decision of the Federal Minister for the Media, Dr Moss-Cass, to put TVT-6 off the air for what was termed a minor misdemeanour, too much commercial content during a given period. While many other stations had committed the same offence, TVT-6 was singled out to become the first television station in Australia to be compulsorily put off the air.
I think it's dreadful.
What will you do during the 2 hours?
Well, I don't know, really. I haven't thought about it, but from Channel 6's point of view, I think it's a pretty crummy deal, really. Rather trifling.
What will you do if you can't watch television at some stage because of this?
Well, we've got so used to it, I suppose we'd miss it terribly, wouldn't we?
I suppose they've got to impose some sort of a penalty, but I think it's been a bit petty, really. What will you do during the 2 hours we're off air?
I'll probably be out somewhere in a beer, I reckon.
One of the greatest prolonged fights on land acquisition occurred when the National Parks Minister, Mr Neil Batt, and the owner of Partridge Island, Dr Richard Ham, came to grips.
We're not concerned with the money. If I'd been offered $1 million for the island, it would not have been for sale. What we're concerned with is that island. We want to save it because we want to do what we believe is right and proper. We want to set it up for the benefit of Tasmania and for the Tasmanian people.
He has misrepresented the situation as part of his overall publicity campaign, and I hope that the people of the state are suspicious of a man who will make so many misrepresentations, and I hope they reject his argument.
One of the biggest fires of 1975 was the destruction of the Macquarie No. 6 wharf at the Seaway Terminal. A cigarette was believed responsible for the fire that gutted the building and destroyed a major shipment of newsprint from Boyer. One of the state's best-known politicians announced his retirement, Senator Reg Wright.
Looking to this last term, do you have any particular things that you want to see come to pass?
Oh, yes, indeed. I've been working on them. I think the position of the trade union in politics, the position of the law courts, and general proposals for national compensation.
With the collapse of the Tasman Bridge, the Great Ferry War was hotting up between private operators and the Transport Commission. The Matthew Brady showed her aggressive style. This was the end of the line for Hobart's suburban rail service, despite a public outcry.
What are you going to do for work after the train stop?
No idea.
You haven't been informed by the railway?
At Abalone Divers was taken by a huge shark. Bobby Slack, owner of the Shellfish, was taken while diving off Burnie Island.
As the hose pulled tight, because, you know,
I pull the hose up for him, save him swimming and pulling the hose too, you know, keep plenty of loose hose around for him. And I went down only about 50 feet away from his air bubbles to grab the hose and pull it back to him. You know. And when I turned around the dinghy and looked back, I seen the thrashing on top of the water. And by the time I went back, I was only about 20, 30 feet away from where the shark broke the surface. I thought it was a seal at first, but then I realised I could see its fin and tail. And just after that, I seen the blood stains in the water and one of his green gloves, garden gloves he wears under those heavy gloves that come to the surface.
75 was also the year of political upheaval, and people took to the streets to show their concern for what was happening in the federal sphere. Local politicians headed the march through the city to Franklin Square. State politics also had its ups and downs when the Premier, Mr. Rees, retired after the ALP enforced an age rule.
At a meeting of the Parliamentary Labor Party this afternoon, I informed the party that I proposed to hand in my commission as Premier on the 31st of March, and I requested the party to hold ballots to decide who my successor would be. And then, as the ballot turned out, Mr. Nielsen will succeed me. It was necessary for a further ballot to be held to appoint a Deputy Premier-elect, and Mr. Lowe was successful in that ballot.
Some would say we began to enter a more enlightened age with the introduction of the West Point Casino. Spectacular shows were produced in the cabaret room, and we saw for the first time naked women dancing and some clever ways of presenting the female form. Hobart was visited by one of the largest ships in the United States Navy. 6,000 sailors came ashore from the USS Enterprise for an 8-day R&R leave. The nuclear-powered aircraft carrier arrived in the Derwent accompanied by a flotilla of small craft, and Hobart's population swelled to massive proportions. Although there were fears of a nuclear leak while in port, a special monitoring force was set in operation to regularly check water samples. Hobart threw its arms out and welcomed the crew, and it was judged by the United States Navy and the authorities in Hobart as a resounding success.
And there are pleasure craft, there are fishing boats, there are yachts. Everything that can afloat is afloat today. Just going across the top of the Enterprise, we see one of the helicopters from the vessel, and of course on the flight deck, numerous jet aircraft.
This was a bad year for many on the West Coast. The Mount Lyell Company reported heavy losses, and the whole economic situation looked grim. The seriousness of the viability of the mine was fully realized when the Mount Lyell Mining and Railway Company announced plans to retrench 400 employees. But the West Coasters stuck together, and with help from both the state and federal government, the company and the town of Queenstown pulled through.
We know we've been in strife ever since the price of copper has been so depressed. But Queenstown's been with us for so long, it just can't be allowed to die.
In the arts world, the Tasmanian Military Tattoo was a roaring success with patrons. Opening night attracted more than 4,500 people. However, it wasn't long before questions were being asked about its cost to the Tasmanian taxpayer. And after losing more than $250,000, the show came to an end. Chairman John Howell was a disappointed man.
We're hopeful that it will be on in '79. We'll be striving mightily to have it back here in Tasmania and re-establish this island's identity as a tourist-orientated state.
The bones of Tasmania's last full-blood Aboriginal, Truganini, were cremated on the 100th anniversary of her death.
Tomorrow morning there will be the cremation of the remains of Truganini. On Saturday morning at 10:30 in the vicinity of Pearson's Point, between Pearson's Point and Burnie Island, there will be the scattering of the ashes, and then a week later, on the centennial anniversary of Truganini's death, there will be the dedication of Truganini Park on Mount Nelson.
The man who replaced Mr. Rees as Premier, Bill Nielsen, our current Agent General, was a man who used to thoroughly enjoy himself, and given the opportunity, he liked to display his talents.
Now the waters, they love their rum and shandy, but I find it makes me randy. I much prefer a tasty piece of meat, and I do enjoy the taste of a cut from round the waist. People are the nicest things I eat.
Thousands of dollars were spent on a new night spot for Hobart. Silver's nightclub opened, and after a short period, a large gelignite bomb was found wired to the building. The police were called, evacuated the area, and carried out an investigation. But the culprit was never found. Tasmania's #1 tourist attraction, Port Arthur, celebrated the centenary of its closing in 1977. And locals on the Tasman Peninsula made sure everyone was aware of the occasion. Even a special church service was commemorated with a full house looking back on its long history. The air shuttle service, BizJets, begins its service between northern Tasmania and Melbourne.
But just before today's flight, there are unkind words for both Ansett and TAA.
Ansett serve some 70 centres: Dubbo, Cooma, Wagga, Coffs Harbour, Bathurst, Maryborough, Port Lincoln, you know, right through Western Australia, right up the north coast of Queensland. I just can't. On the one airport where they have been offered competition, suddenly they see fit to reduce the airfares by some 20%. You know, to me, the government would never wear anything like that.
Nonetheless, today's flight was a success. All who flew had no complaints, and with a fare $6 cheaper or $19 cheaper standby, they managed on the hour-long trip without any hostesses.
78 was also the year of the Tiger Line controversy. Gordon Barton had proposed a fast daylight shipping service with the mainland. And after endless rounds of unsuccessful negotiations with unions, business, marine boards and government, Mr. Barton's plans were shelved. But not before everyone realised that Mr. Barton was not a man to be beaten easily.
There'll be, of course, a road service to connect with the ships at Devonport, and we believe that as a result of our negotiations with the Tasmanian Road Transport Association, that service will actually be done by members of the Tasmanian Road Transport Association.
On another matter, today a telegram was sent to Mr. Batt by the Tasmanian Shippers Association, who conducted a survey among their 34 members, and 31 were in favour of the proposal. Are you gladdened by this response?
Oh, I'd be extremely surprised if the shippers didn't regard this as a good idea. I mean, that's the whole purpose of the thing, to improve services for people that ship freight. And therefore, it's no surprise that the shippers came out in favour of it.
And on the job issue, could Hobart people that lose jobs, for instance, on the waterfront, get similar jobs in Devonport?
Well, unquestionably, if there's going to be less wharf labourers employed in Hobart, and I don't believe that that will be the case, but if there was, well, naturally, there'd be a similar amount of work to be done in the north. So from the point of view of the state as a whole, the job opportunities created would be greater than the job opportunities lost.
In February of 1978, we had a visit from one of the world's most graceful passenger liners, the QE2. This was quite a significant trip, as her first port of call on her maiden voyage to Australia was Hobart.
What you're looking at is the richest ship in the world. By now, some of the early morning passengers have risen and had breakfast and come out on deck to have their first look at Hobart. The QE2's got 2 tugs pulling her, one on each end, and she's being escorted up the river by a flotilla of small boats. From the air, QE2 looks massive, 66,000 tons of her. She appears almost as big as the Enterprise. She'll soon be docking at Macquarie Wharf, taking up nearly 2 wharf spaces. Then most of her passengers will be descending on Hobart to spend the day sightseeing and shopping. One would assume they'll have plenty of money to spend, because already they're spending up to $1,000 a day for the privilege of traveling on QE2.
Well, there she goes. That's it. The last for the Tasman Limited. Tasmania has had a lot of firsts, but this is perhaps one first that she needn't be proud of. She's the first state in Australia to do away with passenger services. A lot of people on the train today are pretty sad. A lot are here for the historical occasion to say that they rode the Tasman Limited before it folded. But there it is. The Tasman Limited rail service, gone.
A raging blizzard swept the ski field at Mount Mawson and took the life of a 26-year-old South Hobart man, John Davis, who was killed under an avalanche of snow. A skier is missing on Mount Mawson, believed to be under an avalanche of snow on a steep section of the mountain called the Golden Stairs. The alarm was raised late this afternoon when a skier could not find his companion after setting off on a run down the Golden Stairs. Word soon spread among skiers on Mount Mawson, and many quickly converged on what was thought may be the area where the man went missing. No details of the skier are available. However, he is believed to be 28 years of age and an experienced skier who knew the area well. Conditions on the mountain were described as being some of the worst encountered for many years. Wind gusts whipped up powdered snow, making visibility difficult for more than a few metres.
For over 20 minutes, we've been fighting our way up here. We were almost down near Lake Dobson when we got a call from one of the skiers back from near the car park that someone may have been caught in an avalanche. So a couple of the skiers grabbed a couple of shovels and started up off the Golden Stairs, and we've been pushing along with these skiers to try and find out whether, in fact, one unfortunate skier has fallen and been covered with up to 6 feet of snow. We've had great difficulty, I think I'm having great difficulty even talking, trying to get this far. We've come up probably about 500 feet and we've had to push through 3-foot-high snow. At the moment, there's great concern for the safety of one skier, or possibly two. Instructions are being shouted from the top up there that the skier may be somewhere around about here at the moment, and we've got approximately 25 skiers who are using their skis and then digging in and trying to find whether in fact they can feel anything in the snow. It's a hopeless situation. Every couple of minutes we get another blizzard that blows in across the top. In fact, here's one coming now which cuts visibility right down to about 15 or 20 metres. But these skiers, they're going to battle on because there's no certainty as to whether there is a skier here or not. So we'll stay with it and see what happens.
Although there has been concern for the Franklin River that it may be dammed for hydro development, a concerted campaign began late in 1979 to save it from future power development. At the same time, police search and rescue became involved with quite a number of searches for rafters missing on the Gorton, Denison and the Franklin.
Leslie Linsell had been swept from his rubber raft about 6 kilometres upstream from the junction of the Franklin and Jane rivers. He was making the trip with a 49-year-old woman, the last person to see him alive. A police search and rescue squad today based its operations below a stretch of boiling rapids called the Pig Trough, where Linsell had gone into the river.
The river is still running at more than normal height for this time of the year, about 1 metre higher. Our helicopter found the searchers' camp and we continued flying low down the Franklin River. About 1 kilometre further downstream, we came across a raft identical to that in which the missing man was travelling. The raft appears to be completely undamaged. There are no holes in it, but its front bow line has been caught up around a small tree on a tiny island in the middle of the river. On Saturday night, when his unidentified companion told police for the first time what had happened, she said that she saw her companion swept under a large rock by the pressure of the water. He was wearing a full life jacket at the time. We continued searching by air and found, not far from the place where we discovered the raft, a life jacket. It's been cut by rocks, possibly, and near the life jacket, a rafter's paddle and a bailing sponge. Cameraman Andrew Wallace and I continued searching on foot in the area where we discovered the earlier debris. We found, wedged on the upstream side of a rock, a track shoe.
Shocked after the accident, Linsell's companion sat on the bank until following rafting parties found her 24 hours later. She refused to go back onto the river and, with 3 of the rafters, walked out of the area.
People of Hobart were shocked with the disappearance of Mandy Carter, the 22-year-old daughter of TVT-6 Managing Director Mr. Don Carter. Massive searches took place in many parts around Hobart, and weeks later, Mandy's body was found floating in the Derwent in a secluded area between Bridgewater and Boyer. Although a big squad of detectives worked around the clock, the person responsible for her death has not been apprehended. There were a number of similarities between the 67 bushfires and the Zeehan disaster, the most striking of which was the date. Both occurred at almost the same time of the year. The Zeehan fire destroyed 40 homes, but miraculously, no one was seriously injured or killed. There is no doubt that the coordinated efforts of the police, Transport Australia officials, ambulance officers and civilians prevented any loss of life when a twin-engine aircraft of TasAir ditched into the sea off 7 Mile Beach with engine trouble. The pilot and 6 passengers were rescued safely. 2 swam more than 1 kilometre to shore, while the other 4 were whisked into ambulances and ferried to the Royal Hobart Hospital. The aircraft was wrecked and salvaged 3 days later. That was a representative look at the last 21 years of news, and we trust that you enjoyed the programme. There were many items not covered during the period, but trying to condense 21 years of news into an hour was a most daunting task. Thanks for joining us, and we trust that you enjoy the many anniversary specials coming up on TVT. Next week in PPP, we look at the Christchurch to Hobart Airlink and New Zealand. Good night.
Cementi homes built for the employees. Swallow Hayward's Biscuit Factory is one of the most modern in the world. Its new 70,000 oven producing up to 2.5 million pounds weight of biscuits a year using Tasmanian flour exclusively. Tasmania's railway system links north, south, east and west of the island with Tasmanian-built diesels travelling 1.5 million miles yearly, carrying 2.25 million passengers and 1.25 million tons of freight. First-class hotels, motels, service apartments, caravan parks and camping grounds attract 180,000 tourists each year to Tasmania. Most hotel and motel units are equipped with TV sets, and many have their own radios and refrigerators.
Hey now, you better listen to me, every one of you. We've got a lot of work to do. Forget about your women and that water can. Today you're working for the man. To meet, I'm gonna see you make it on time. Oh, don't relax, I want elbows and backs, I wanna see everybody from behind. 'Cause you're
famous for the apples, the apple isle. Everyone worked in Tasmania. They grew the apples. They did lots of other things. They were exported to every state in the Commonwealth and to overseas. What a wonderful bumper harvest crop came in year after year. And speaking of crops, families, whole families, off they went to have a wonderful time with the hops, the hop fields of New Norfolk. And that was the time when whole families would gather together and say, okay, let's have our annual holiday, go up to New Norfolk, pick a few hops, make a few bob, have a nice time in the sunshine, and the whole family got together. That was a lovely time, wasn't it? Can you remember doing that? Just out there in the fields, taking your time, having a good time, pulling down those big, strong vines to take the hops off, knowing that it was going to end up being a pretty good brew, sitting out just having a picnic. Then down to the west coast. All the mines, the hydroelectricity. An exciting time for Tasmania. A time of great development when everyone seemed to have a job because they were all needed.
Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul.
The town of Rosebery and the mines.
If you see me,
all worked with hydroelectricity.
A lot of men didn't, a lot of men died. One fist of iron, the other of steel.
And off to Meadowbank we go.
Then the left one will you load 16 tons. What do you get?
The scars on the earth.
Deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you
people working, building. Building for a better tomorrow. So we've inherited that today. Gee, it was hard work for these blokes.
To the company.
Pretty hot work too, by the look of it. This is the new Norfolk Bridge. Have a look at it. It's a pretty interesting story. There's no passing on the bridge, so he had to back up. Thank heavens he did. Otherwise, it could have been a major. This is the new bridge. Not as much fun, I suppose, as backing up on the old one, but a lot easier, take my word for it. And so, the new housing subdivisions were opened, with much pomp and circumstance, by Electric Eric, the premier of the time, but we found an Australian flag to place over this plaque to declare officially open Risdon Vale, developed by the Housing Department, and weren't they proud of it? Of course, there always had to be speeches and ceremonial plantings of trees, and building kept going on. This is the extension to the museum. there are those in the community who say perhaps it could have been better. But it's what you see inside, I suppose, that counts in a museum. But it was a time of building. Everything was going up, reaching for the sky.
When in fact we have a police force who perhaps should be doing these things.
Well, in actual fact, the watchmen do many things which are not within the province of a police force. You'd be surprised at the number of factories that have got a cooling room or a drying room or a heating room, automatic machinery which operates during the night. And part of the duties of a watchman, of a properly trained watchman, are to check and inspect these aspects in factories.
How many watchmen have you on your staff?
Throughout the various states, there are over 1,000 men.
And how do you pick these men?
We do a security background checking. One of the things that we do look for in any watchman is that he's got a stake in the country. From the viewpoint we prefer married men.
This is a budget in which the big man has once again escaped, and the little man has copped the lot. The increases in sales tax, telephone charges, and excise duties are all designed to slug the little people. At the same time, those struggling to survive on pensions and repatriation benefits have received miserable increases, insulting increases, despite the £1 rise in the basic wage recently granted to meet costs of living rises which have taken place in the past 3 years.
Here we are at the birth of the tinny, the first beer cans in Tasmania. That brings back a lot of memories. And notice how automated it all became. Oh, very clever we were in those days. We thought up machines that took the jobs of men. It was a very labour-intensive job, and so they had to come up with a machine that could load the cartons. Still, it took a bloke to put the carton on the machine, so I suppose that was still something. The good old tinny. How many barbecues have suffered since? Thank you very much. Tasmanians were never people to hide their light under a bushel. They went off to Melbourne and they took a little basket of apples, not a sign anywhere to say they were from Tasmania, and then sort of talked people into trying an apple. Would you take an apple from this lady? They were very lucky because they received a little brochure that said, come to the apple aisle. And some kids, well, they really got stuck into it. Weren't they a trusting lot? She could have been the Wicked Witch of the North. But no, she wasn't. They accepted the apples. She gave them all away. Except one lady. Well, will I? Oh, all right, then I'll take it. That brought a smile to her face. Tasmania was being promoted all over Australia. They went from Melbourne and then up to Sydney. They even had big buses with great banners on it. And wait for this. This is a very special treat. It tells you exactly where you are. The holiday island with the world's most even climate.
Tasmania naturally cannot expect these big jets to arrive here, but they will come to Melbourne and the people will spill over and go into the neighbouring areas. And we must be ready with our hotels, our tourist facilities. Everything must be of a very good standard so that we can get the utmost out of this boom.
Money was important, and even on Leave It to Beaver, they taught them how to save a few pennies.
You got home early. Powder. Well, that means you ducked out, Dave. What's in the package?
Your father picked that up for you on the way home.
Oh, boy, I bet it's extra track for my electric train. What is it?
Oh, boys, it's a piggy bank.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is, all right.
Your father thought you could start saving your dimes and quarters in it.
Oh, I thought it was about time you started learning about thrift. Now, you feed this pig every day, and you'll be surprised how fat he grows.
Look, I have a quarter. Now, I'll start you off.
All right, here's $50. Well, what about you, boy?
Well, I guess I got a couple of dimes here.
I guess I got 5 cents. But I was going to give it to Larry Mundell for a horse tooth. He found it in the street.
Come on, Beef. Everybody else put something in.
Now, you see? You've got $1 in there already.
Sure, you keep that up, and before you know it, you'll have a small fortune.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Dad.
Sure.
Supper will be ready in a little while, boys.
Wally, I got a great idea.
What's that?
Let's break the pig open and spend $1.
No, Beef. Let's keep putting money in for a couple of months, and then we'll break it open.
Okay. I can hardly wait till it's a couple of months from now.
It's all very well to earn the money, but then you've got to pay your income tax.
Chicago, May 5th, 1932. After 7 months of legal delays, Al Capone, the most notorious product of the nation's experiment with prohibition, was on his way to federal prison to serve 11 years for income tax evasion. To watch the mobster leave was Elliot Ness, chief of the unique federal squad known as the Untouchables, the special unit that had worked for 18 months to bring Al Capone to justice. For these men, the end of the Capone career was just the beginning of another era of violence. The king of the hoodlums had left a vacant throne behind him. The next man to claim it would pay for the privilege in bullets and bloodshed.
Good old Al. Remind me to write him every day.
You don't have time. Who's next in line?
Mr. Benny?
Yes?
Mr. Benny, we're from the Department of Internal Revenue.
I'll get it there.
Jimmy, why do you always take the pen along? They may not even want your autograph.
Yeah? Mr. Jimmy Stewart?
That's right.
Mr. Stewart, we're from the Office of the Collector of Internal Revenue.
Well, gentlemen, come right in. Make yourself comfortable.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart, we wanted to ask you...
Asked the girl what she wanted to be. She said, baby, can't you see? I want to be famous, a star of the screen. But you can do something in between. Maybe you can drive my car. Yes, I'm gonna be a star. Maybe you can drive my car. And maybe I love you. I told that girl that my...
Do you remember the floating bridge? And the span that went up whenever a ship came, and you had to wait for what seemed an eternity waiting for the ship to go through? Those were the days. But now with the Tasman Bridge, of course, no motor vehicles are allowed to be on the bridge while a vessel is passing underneath. You see, we were a gentle time then, and I suppose we took things as they came. But it was a magnificent piece of work, the old floating bridge, and a magnificent piece of memory for us to have a look at tonight, because it takes us back to that time when it was a little more easygoing, wasn't it? And no one was really rushing about to get hither and yon. But today, in the way the world is going, then you need to get from point A to point B very quickly. This was the floating bridge, and this is the memory that we have when they were starting to build the Tasman Bridge, bringing the gantries in and moving them into place. the little tugs working hard, getting them all around. Magnificent workmanship.
I remember the night when we walked in the sands of Waikiki and I held you oh so tight.
In many ways, Mother Nature has been benevolent to Tasmania, but when she's put out, she can be a proper harridan. And this storm really very nearly destroyed the floating bridge. While the other one was being built, if we hadn't have had it, there was no way to get from one shore to the other. The city would have been definitely cut in halves as the barges bashed and hit during the storm tempest as it came through. It was a trying time for lots and lots of people. It was going to be the time that they would say farewell to the floating bridge. And of course, there had to be that last symbolic cutting of the cord, as it were, as they were taken away for the last time, taken out to sea, to be floated away and then sunk from sight, never to be seen again. It's nice to see it, isn't it? It brings back lots of memories.
And how would you think, then, if we put perhaps a limit on cars during these long weekends, a limit for speed?
Well, now, even that's been thought of. They've done that in England. I don't know whether they did it this Easter, but last Easter they had an upper speed limit of 50 miles per hour on vehicles. It was suggested here, but it wasn't brought in. But it could have quite an effect.
Seatbelts were introduced into motor vehicles in Tasmania. They were just the lap type, and weren't they primitive? Could you imagine just strapping your baby in like that? But of course, as primitive as they were, they did save lives, and so everyone buckled up for safety. And speaking of safety, safety rails had to be tested the hard way.
Superintendent Reed, when a breathalyzer test going to be incorporated in the laws of the state?
March the 15th.
Can you tell us a little bit about the machine?
Well, the only thing it will register, of course, is the alcoholic contents in the blood, and this is a scheme that's now will be available on from the 15th of March that will indicate the quantity of alcohol concentration in a person's blood.
Are people going to be compelled to take the test?
Well, they may refuse. They will be told to take the test, but they may refuse, and there's a substantial penalty for not complying with the police officer's direction.
What is going to be the maximum blood alcohol content that's going to be permissible?
0.08% at the moment, but what will be a margin between that and what we will consider an offence will be decided by the department within the next few days, possibly 0.10 or something of that nature.
Quick quiz. What is this man doing? Yep, you guessed it. He's working out the lines on the road. This was a breakthrough in technology. Switch it on, and away we go. The lights are flashing, and for the first time, spray plastic was on the road, marking those wonderful lines. And that was the way it was going to be. What a wonderful breakthrough. Great for the motorist if you didn't happen to be driving behind him, because, wow, that's what happened. You got a nice white mist all over your car. And it missed a few as they went up the other side. But what happened to the artisan? The man who really worked out in minute detail exactly where that line was going. Often he got run over by this. You recognised him. He was the bloke with a big white line up his shirt. But that was the job that went by the wayside. I wonder where he is today. What price progress? Traffic lights. Augusta Road, Lena Valley. Saw them. They were the first ones outside the metropolitan area. But there were more to come. Lots of other places decided that they needed them as well. And where did they happen? The Tower Road, Newtown. There were the next set of lights. To walk, not to walk. But there was a time that we had to pay the price, didn't we, of not getting run over. So the lights made it easy. Red, amber and green, out in the suburbs. Who'd have thought that it'd have ever happened in Hobart? But happen it did. Just wait for the change. And changes did come aplenty. This is Rosny Hill. Do you remember when it looked like this? Do you remember when they built the overpass to the school? Of course, schools were mushrooming all over Tasmania. It was the era of the baby boom. And kids, like this bloke, had to go to school, and they had to be safe. And what better way to get them to cross the road than to have their own overpass? And this is, look at that. Look on the hillside there. Gosh, go and have a look at it tomorrow and see what it used to look like. And as they moved it in, everyone seemed to have a job in those days, didn't they? It was labour intensive, and they certainly knew how to do it. And do it they did. Swinging the last span of it in with the steps. Get her there right, George. Okay, move her over there. Ah, another era going. The tram lines. Why they ever got rid of the trams, I'll never know. A good, clean, efficient way of moving people, getting the passengers to and from. Didn't have to have the police around as much. Hey, have a look at the car. And then, of course, we had the policeman on point duty. It was marvellous to have that friendly man telling you, yep, you can go round there. And, of course, all this hard work that went on. People seemed to work very, very hard in those days. And they were constructing things, building for a better today, I suppose, if you look at it like that. And that's the excitement of it. This is the railway roundabout. And it was going to be the gateway to the airport, and the new motel was being built for all the tourists who were going to come to Tasmania and enjoy it. And enjoy it they have in their thousands. And didn't it look magnificent? There it is. Hollyman Avenue at the airport had to be opened. And if you're having an opening, you've got to have an audience. And the audience had to be seated in beautiful Art Deco chairs. So they came to have a deco at the opening. But the funny part about it was they had to find a flag to lift off the plaque. And what did they use? They used an Air Force flag, of course. Or it was at civil aviation in those days. Very civil. Except we had no aviation. There wasn't a plane to be seen at the airport. But that's the way we did it in those days. At least we sat comfortably and enjoyed ourselves.
Captain Gibbs, one of the problems seems to be on these aircraft on the short haul from Melbourne to Hobart, which took only 50 minutes, the serving of meals. How do you see this problem?
Well, I must say it's given us a great deal of headaches. A trolley that we've introduced to try and help speed it up. The girls really need to be issued with roller skates. We've tried all the shortcuts we can to try and get beverage and meal service in this short period, and I suppose it will finally reach a stage where it just won't be able to be done.
We were an inventive lot way back then. We had our aeroplanes, but we wanted them to go quicker and faster. So what did they try to do so they could have a bigger payload? They put rockets on them. It was rocket assisted. What a shame the fellas have lost their hats. Oh no, they came back. So there we are, we're having a look at that. We'll put the rocket on and see if it'll work. Anyway, it's worth a try. Chocks away. Just give it a go, Reg. Out goes the plane. TAA. Remember when? Watch the rocket. We're away. Beam me up, Scotty hadn't been thought of. Though it did have one or two drawbacks. It went something like this. Yuck. But then, of course, there were other guys trying for things. The scene, the MCG. The biggest send-up that's ever happened there. With his backpack up, he went, what a mark, it's a screamer. Wouldn't they love that at Richmond? Down he comes, back to earth. A job he can have on his own. Gosh, we enjoyed simple pleasures.
Council were debating the bill tonight, and I would think that they would finish the debate tonight, and we will know tonight whether daylight saving will be law this summer or not in Tasmania.
Daylight saving gave us a whole extra hour to play with. And play we did at the Clarence Pool. They were building it then, and it was pretty cool work if you could get the job. You know it now, of course, with the inflatable dome. But this is how it looked during the time of construction. And every little detail was looked into. Even the tiles were placed by hand. And who could ever forget the magnificent America's Cup Challengers, led by that beautiful vessel owned by the late Sir Frank Packer, the Greatle. Even Popeye loved it. And if you ever wanted to go out and have a bit of a wager, where did you go in those days? You went to the betting shop. And did you dress up? You sure did.
Well, the completion date that we've set our contractors is the 20th of December, just prior to Christmas.
And do you think they're going to make it?
They must make it, yes. We feel that we'll make this particular target date because we want to be open in time, of course, for Christmas.
Now, tell us a little bit about this drive-in. It's going to be rather a large one. How many cars is it going to hold?
Well, the final total hasn't been settled upon yet, but it'll be between 300 and 400 cars.
Look, Mr. Hardy, if you were out looking for us, there must be a reason. What is it?
Someone blew up the Wells Fargo office a little while ago and took $25,000 in cash. Your father said Tom did it, Ruby.
Tom? Did you?
I'm your husband, Ruby, not your father.
Clear out! The way they teach you to say thanks where you come from, Sonny?
Thanks. Now go on, get moving.
Somebody ought to teach you a lesson, huh? You better watch him, Rowdy. He's spookier than the horses. Yeah, well, the spanking will change that.
Watch it out.
Hands behind your back, both of them. Sit on that chair.
What is this? You guys really cops?
Are you saying I didn't treat you fair? Well, officer, it just seemed to me that you could have given me a warning instead of a ticket. After all, that sign's only been there a few minutes. Well, if it was... I don't make it, I only enforce it.
Well, he's not accepting your ticket. He's giving it right back to you. Aren't you, Mitchell? Gosh, oh, here, I'll give it back. Let me.
Jeepers, Dad, you're not supposed to tear up a ticket. I'll pick it up.
Never mind, Dennis. Just leave it there. All right, officer, what are you going to do about that?
Well, first, I'm going to give Mr. Mitchell another ticket for walking on the grass. Then I'm going to give him a... That's interfering with an officer in the performance of his...
Inspector, I see this same girl go in building where this man killed yesterday. My conscience tells me to do the right thing.
That's most helpful, Chongpin. Thank you. We appreciate people coming forward with information.
Appreciation, very important, but doesn't put food in mouths of many children.
Oh, yeah, stop by Inspector Grover's desk on the way out. He'll have something for you.
And now for newspapers, Mr. Evans.
What are you talking about, Chongpin?
You hear a good story, you always pay too.
Now, wait a minute. I just happen to be standing here.
Mr. Evans, you penalize me for being honest?
You honest? Now, come on.
Normal times, I tell Inspector Noose. He pays me. I go find you, tell you same news. You pay me. Today, poor man with many children suffer because you two in same room here, Noose, together.
I get it. Your logic is irrefutable. Here.
May all your sons grow up to be editors.
Heaven forbid.
Thank you, Chongpin.
Whole family bless you, Mr. Evans.
Okay.
How big a family has he?
Family? Only people that old bachelor supports are the owners of the Mahjong parlors.
Through the mirror of my mind, time after time, I see reflections of you and me. Reflections of the way life used to be. Reflections of the love you took from me. Oh, I'm all alone now. No love to shield me. Trapped in a world that's a distorted reality. Happiness you took from me and left me.
To close shops within a radius of 7 miles of Hobart on Saturday mornings.
I'm definitely against it. As a matter of fact, I've already registered a protest in the Mercury attributing the pressures to big business and other interests that have got no really interest in the suburban areas, but it's a great facility for the husband and wife to do a bit of shopping on Saturday morning. I mean, it's the only opportunity they get out together.
Now, what's your feeling on the proposed closing of shops here in Bellerive on Saturday morning?
It places people a lot, or big shopkeepers themselves, I suppose.
helps a lot of people.
Does it help you to have the shops open on Saturday morning?
Oh, I think it does.
Why is
You
that?
come in, you can get your groceries, you've got your son home or your husband, and they can bring the car with you. And
That's right, they can't do this during the weekday.
No, they cannot.
Excuse me, do you like the word royal for our new unit of currency?
Well, I can only agree with one somebody said in the paper. It might prevent it being in a republic. That's about all I can think of it.
Thank you very much.
No.
Why not?
I just think it sounds stupid. I think dollar would have been much better, or to have kept it as the pound.
Well, you don't like the new decimal currency, then?
No, I don't like the names they've got for it. And I don't think I'd ever understand it anyway, Brian.
You'll be well coached on that. Thanks so much. Excuse me, about royal, do you like the name for royal?
Personally, I don't like it much.
What would you sooner have it called?
Oh, I would rather have a dollars.
The dollars?
Yeah.
You think it'll be easier for everybody?
Yeah, because everything is royal today, royal, opera, royal that, royal that.
Do you think it'll cause a lot of confusion when we come into it?
Well, I think it does.
Well, in my opinion, any person who takes a knife, he should not be allowed to retain his own. Where I come from in England, they hang him. If it's a murder, they hang him. It's a kind of commit murder here and get placed on a bond. That is only my own opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now at 7:30 in the morning, just half an hour from 8 o'clock, the scene is quite orderly. The crowds are beginning to swell again, but even so, there would only be about 900 to 1,000 demonstrators, the rest of the number made up by police, about 200 of them, and pressmen.
Well, to my mind, I haven't thought much about it, frankly, but capital punishment should still be enforced in Australia. You really feel that? I do, yeah.
3 minutes to 8, and the scene here outside Pentridge is still very much the same. Perhaps just a few more demonstrators have helped to swell the ranks. Police, still in large numbers, are guarding the entrance very well to protect against any violence that may occur in just 2 minutes from now.
Oh, well, I would be more lenient. I think probably I would be a little bit soft. I don't believe in hanging at all, no. I don't think two wrongs make a right at any time.
They will suffer very much, particularly if the importation is completely banned. There'll be no means of them obtaining a starting pistol or a pop pistol, which is essential to their work.
Howdy. Stage leaving on time?
Yeah, after supper. It gets dark. The desert's a little bit cooler.
You got a stranger in town. Who is he? Oh, I sell guns. Carrying a money bag. Man carrying money can usually use one of these.
Oh, yeah, I remember you. Well, that's Jim Hardy. He's the Wells Fargo man. I'd say he's a pretty good prospect. He's been with Wells Fargo a long time. He's probably wore out 2 or 3 of them things. Say, that's a beaut. What is it?
45. Hardy, you got a minute? I kind of like to... What's the idea? I just want to sell you a gun. Look at it. It's not loaded. I'm sorry. However, when a gun's pointed at me, I've got no way of knowing whether it's loaded or not. I just sell them. Selling them's one thing. Handling them's another. Oh, I can handle it if I have to. But if you point it at me again, you may have to, sir.
Well, fundamentally, I think that the granting of equal pay is a Commonwealth matter. It was the government of Australia that was present at the United Nations Assembly when the Declaration of Human Rights was signed. And, of course, one of the provisions in that is that everyone, without any discrimination, shall have the right to equal pay for equal work. Do you think too many women are working these days?
Yes, I think so. I think the trend is for too many women getting into too many men's jobs.
Why do you think this is bad?
Well, I think with automation coming along, there's, the man will have to be a specialist, and the field will be going to be cut down.
Well, why shouldn't he become a specialist?
Well, I think he should, but I mean, it's going to, if the women are going to encroach on it, it's going to make it less and less.
This matter of pay, do you think if a woman is capable of doing a specialist job as the man is capable, should she be paid as much?
Yes, I think so.
Now, the attitude to married women was founded in the Depression, when it was generally thought, well, we mustn't have married women employed, well, when there are so many unemployed persons. And full employment meant the full employment of a breadwinner. So there was a law that said that married women could not be permanently employed in the public service.
Well, the attitude of the government is that there have been many married women who've given wonderful service to the government of the state who, as the law stands at the moment, are employed in a temporary capacity. These people will be entitled to apply for permanency. They'll be entitled, if they wish, to go on the superannuation fund, or if they don't wish to go on the superannuation fund, they can. It will be necessary to alter this bill because it doesn't cover some of the contingencies, such as, for instance, the question of childbirth, leave for childbirth for married women. But for the 725 women who are now employed by the government, this will be quite a major breakthrough.
National service was introduced into Australia, and Tasmania's sons went away to do their bit. They were not old enough to vote. They weren't old enough to go and have a drink. But they were old enough to fight for their nation. And later on, of course, a number of these young men went on to serve gallantly and valiantly in the jungles of Vietnam. And their families said fond farewells to them. For many of these young blokes, they'd never been away from home before. As a matter of fact, not too many of them would have ever been on an aeroplane. And this is the way they left the Apple Isle, to go and do their bit in national service. Who will ever forget the devastating bushfire that swept through Tasmania at this time? It started out well enough in the morning. You remember? It was very hot, very sunny. 100 degrees on the old scale. It had topped the ton. And then just after lunchtime, the fires started. The first smoke came into Hobart. People then realised that something terrible was amiss. It was a day of total devastation. Not just Hobart, but right down to the southeastern portion of Tasmania. Men fought for their property. Just to contain the blaze would have been enough. Volatile fuels had to be looked after. Possessions dragged hurriedly from homes. It was a time to worry and to wonder if they would live through this terrible devastation. The flames licked and leaked at everything. And what do you save? You save the bike. It's amazing, isn't it, the things that people go after in times of worry. And the flames just didn't care. They had their way, their wicked way, with everything in their path. Houses were lost. Great tracts of bushland devastated, blackened, flattened. And then came the horrible time, the realisation later, after the flames had gone through, to find out just what had been lost. What could never, ever be replaced. And isn't it always true? It's the treasures that you lose that you can't replace. Things like photographs, memories that you've had, keepsakes, all gone into the insatiable flames as they ate their way through.
I'll tell about the night we met and how my heart can't forget the way you smiled at me. I want the world to know the story of my life, the moment when your lips met mine, and that first exciting time I held.
The clean-up time had to come. How much was it going to cost? Did people have time to count the cost at that time? They were just lucky to be alive.
Then later on, the joy of making up never.
The army came in to help. Malcolm Fraser was the Minister for the Army at the time. They did a great job.
I've got to take you for my wife. So the story of my
Children's toys, bedding, the family car. And then came the time to repair it all. Men and women of Tasmania worked throughout days and nights. The insurance assessors, the linesmen, all had a job to do. Communications had to be re-established right throughout the whole of Hobart. And they did it. They worked together. And it was reassuring to know that Australians could still do that. What did they find in the fire? A few pennies. The children from all over Australia sent toys and clothes for the kids of Tasmania. We came together as a nation, we came together as a state, we helped each other, and we knew that the future was going to be great.
I hope.
Stay with us now for another program in TAS-78, the cycle manufacturer.
The start of the Australian Schoolboys Cycling Championships. Cycling has been a popular sport in Tasmania for more than 90 years. Professional races draw big crowds and offer big prize money to the winners. Ken Self has been making bikes, racing bikes or watching bikes for as long as he can remember. The Self family have been cycling since 1896. Ken's grandfather loved to watch the road races, and his father Bert Self was a champion cyclist, so that it was natural for Ken to, as he puts it, just slip onto the saddle. As a young boy, Ken can remember the finish of the road races. Large crowds would turn out into the streets to greet the winner. This photo of Bert Self, Ken's father, was used as an advertising campaign to sell Hallam cycles. In 24 races during the past 2 years, Bert Self has secured 7 first prizes, 2 second, 4 thirds and 19 fastest times on his Hallam. Bert says, "The Hallam is the fastest and most reliable cycle I have ever ridden." It's not surprising that Bert decided to go into cycle manufacturing for himself. In business, Bert was every bit as bold and daring as he was on the racetrack. And it worked. Self cycles flourished. The 1940s, and Ken Self is a Tasmanian scratch champion. Ken started making bikes as an apprentice to his father at the age of 15. To be a good bike builder, says Ken, it's important to be a good bike rider. Today, Self Cycles still make their own frames and assemble bikes to suit the customer's particular fancy. New lightweight materials make it possible to produce a strong but lighter frame. A bike built with this lightweight Japanese tubing can weigh up to 10 pounds less than before. And its advantage to a racing cyclist? 3 or 4 vital seconds at the start of a race. The frame is designed in pieces which are fitted together like a jigsaw puzzle. Because these brazing pegs keep the frame strong and rigid, they make it possible for the builder to repair it if the bike is damaged. The first part of the frame is completed and ready for the soldering iron. Although he started out as an apprentice to his father in the family business at 15, Ken Self has not always worked for Self Cycles. In the 1920s, Hobart boasted many fine cycle manufacturers, but the increasing popularity and availability of the motor car caused many to go out of business. During the Depression years of the 1930s, people were unable to afford bikes and business dropped off even further. Ken left Self Cycles for a time and worked for Smalls, the biggest manufacturer of cycles in Australia. After the soldered frame has cooled off, it's sandblasted to smooth off any roughness around the joints. Although the motor car wooed the public away from bicycles as a means of everyday transport, bike races remained a popular spectator sport. This, together with the end of the Depression and the fact that many other manufacturers had closed down completely, meant that Self Cycles could once more do business. The last few years have seen an increased interest in cycling. Ken puts it down to a change in people's attitudes toward their way of life. A desire to get fit and escape from the speed and pollution of the car have, he says, taken people out from behind the wheel and put them back on the saddle. If not for 7 days a week, then for at least 2. The completed frame is undercoated and ready for its final coat of colour. Even the colour of bikes is influenced by the ever-changing fashions of the day. For example, at the moment, people are demanding brightly coloured bikes, blues, greens, and increasingly yellow and orange. The need for a cyclist to be seen on a busy highway and the road safety posters advertising bright protective clothing, such as yellow waterproofs, have no doubt helped the trend. And of course, says Ken, every now and then a customer asks for a black bike, sometimes for luck, sometimes because of the old belief that black is best. The wet, enamelled bike is put in an oven to bake. about half an hour, it will be dry and strong enough to withstand everyday wear and tear. And now the frame is ready for those final finishing touches. Each cycle manufacturer has his own particular trademarks and transfers. When Ken's father, Bert, was a boy of 12, he was a cox for a rowing team. He sat at the stern of the boat and counted time for the rowers, who were grown men. The most important race of the year was to find the head of the Derwent. The Stewarts, Bert's team, were the winners, and they became cock of the Derwent. They gave Bert a present, a flag on a stick with a crowing rooster embroidered on it. Bert kept the flag, and when he went into business for himself, the rooster became his trademark, and his motto, "While I live, I'll crow." Ken still has the little green embroidered flag, and his cycles still carry his father's trademark. The frame completed, it's time to assemble the rest of the bike. Handlebars, saddle, and of course the spoked wheels. The wheel is tested to make sure it is true. Every cyclist knows the problems caused by a wobbly wheel. Even after the finished bike is sold, a customer will come back for repairs or extra accessories. As well as building and repairing his own bikes, it's necessary for Ken to stock and sell a wider range of bikes from the shop in front of his workshop. Christmas is the best time of the year for selling bikes, nobody would doubt that. But the need to repair and maintain bikes and the increased interest in cycling as a hobby makes the rest of the year busy too. And of course, there are always the racing cyclists, like Peter Harwood, who sometimes calls in to buy, but often just to chat.
Thank you very much. Anything like that there's any problems with?
Go to get it nicely because the cup's already in there.
Right, thank you very much.
That's all right, isn't it?
Sure does. That's what every young cyclist should have, I believe. Ken Self-Frame.
Just recently, Self Cycles set up a new shop in the city centre. Barry Self learned the art of bike building from his father Ken, just as Ken learned it from his father Bert. Like his father and his grandfather, Barry has also been a racing cyclist. Barry runs the city store, as well as working with his father in the workshop. 3 generations of Selfs. And, says Ken, we don't intend to stop just there either. There appears, in fact, to be little doubt that one day in the not-too-distant future, another Self will, as Ken puts it, just slip onto the saddle.
violence has already erupted this morning, and I'm hoping to keep it at a reasonable level without...
Good evening, Thomas O'Byrne starting tonight's ABC News from Burnie after a dramatic day of unparalleled industrial conflict. Tonight, hundreds of APPM workers are set to lose their jobs, and scores more have either been injured or arrested in police operations not seen in Tasmania since the Franklin Dam dispute. Away from Burnie, there are now efforts trying to renew peace. But apart from that, tonight's confrontation makes that appear remote. The prospect of violent confrontation had been simmering from the moment last week's peace plan fell through. With 85 police as a human battering ram, that boiled over today outside the mill's main gates. These extraordinary scenes and scores of minor injuries came at the end of a dramatic day in the 3-week-old dispute that started well before dawn.
Now you hold the line, hold your arms, and they wish to arrest you, that's the fact of life, right?
Overnight, police had arrived from across the northwest coast. Their task, clear a gap through the striking unionists so others could go to work. Outnumbering them 3 to 1 and ignoring management's plea and a commission order to return to work, the picketers were resolute.
We're here for our jobs. Our jobs on the line. That's what we're fighting for. Not for them bastards over the road there.
As the group confronted the human wall, scenes that both sides now fear will happen every day the dispute drags on.
I've been here 12 years, been out of come and go as I like, and now this has happened. It'll never be the same again.
An hour later, more day workers marshalled between police ranks. This time, anyone in the way was arrested. 14 in total charged with obstruction, but the lines of protest held firm.
They just simply overwhelmed us at 7 o'clock with the weight of numbers.
By lunchtime, APPM revealed close to half its workforce had now lost their jobs with the company.
It certainly poses difficulties for us, but you know, that's something we'll have to come to grips with.
This afternoon's dramatic confrontation confirmed the company's hard line. Ambulances were called to the front gates to treat several injured, a police officer among them. Several picketers, women included, were also knocked over in the crush of bodies. Though frustrated, the police say they'll have to continue.
We don't like this kind of violence, and we really can't understand it. But nevertheless, it's our job to move workers through if they want to move through.
Is it worth it?
In terms of an exercise in police officers being deployed on one scene, I don't think so.
Tonight, close to 3/4 of APPM's workforce has now been dismissed. In all, about 30 workers got through the gate. The dispute goes back before the Industrial Relations Commission in Melbourne tomorrow. Its compulsory conference, called for 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, follows today's drama on the picket lines in Burnie and a joint request from the federal and state governments. For more on that story, political reporter Andrew Fisher.
Today's violence was enough to reactivate the unusual coalition of Liberal Premier Ray Groom and Labor Minister Peter Cook to look for another settlement to the dispute. They called on Industrial Commission Deputy President Paul Munro to call another hearing.
What is needed is some kind of circuit breaker.
I, on behalf of the Commonwealth Government, will seek leave of the Commission to be joined to the proceedings and put a view to the Commission in that conference.
The circuit breaker will come from the federal government, which until now hasn't formally intervened in the dispute. Meanwhile, reacting to criticism that is called for employees to be allowed to cross the picket line help provoke today's events.
This is what Ray Groom wants, not violence.
Mr. Groom, for the first time, outlined what he believed the company was up to.
There is a risk, of course, the company has an agenda, and that is to close the mill and to downsize numbers. And there's a risk that the environment at Burnie could become a harsher employment environment.
The appearance of interstate security guards allegedly trained in martial arts, has also...
Thanks, Tom. Industrial reporter Thomas O'Byrne in the thick of today's drama. Now to other news, and telecom unions have threatened in...
Now set to spread nationwide. Late today, the ACTU announced a 24-hour mine workers' strike in support of the paper mill picketers. Virginia Hausiger reports.
Everyone's got a different interpretation of what democratic rights are, but us being in the minority, we can disagree with the majority. But somehow we're here in Tasmania, we're not allowed to do that.
These men all want to exercise their right to work.
What about the bloody women?
This morning, some of them tried to do that.
Get off him!
Once we got into the picket line, we were then, I suppose, set upon with a crush of people.
Did you feel very threatened at that time?
I don't know, I don't think I really felt anything. After that, I think a 44-gallon drum full of fire went for a 6 and a few people fell over.
He's on fire!
The police went to escort us in, and when they wouldn't let us through, there was a bit of pushing and shoving, and then I got spat on, and...
How did that make you feel?
Rather sick. Not a real good feeling, especially considering I've got to work with them for the next 4 years. But, yeah, they're not giving me much of an impression.
Today's violence was inevitable. APPM has clenched its fists with iron gloves. The company's superiors yesterday appealed to the Supreme Court to order police intervention. That was refused, but the court made it clear police had a duty to act and prevent mob rule. By early morning, there were 30 arrests. Later today, there were more.
Let go of this leg, or break your arm.
There's a bastard there. Exactly right in the face. You talk about non-violence, there's a mongrels, a lot of you.
20 of the workers who want to work managed to get inside. Those who didn't plan to keep trying.
This seems so ridiculous to me. The whole thing is people have got to have money in their pockets, and once they start losing money, I mean, I've lost a lot of money and other people have too, so it's going to get nasty, it really is, and you know, I'm not looking forward to it.
Do you think the company are in the wrong?
No, I don't. They've got a right to run their business, as they've said. I mean, it's their business. If people don't want to work there, finish and let someone else in that wants to work. There's 100,000 people out of work. Let someone else have a go at it if they don't want to have a go.
But the picketers remain firm. They're not moving.
Principle, we will not be shat on, and that's it.
But the company's determined to be pretty tough. I mean, are you prepared to lose your job?
What do you mean prepared? We've lost them. We've all been booted out.
APPM has brought in half a dozen private guards, men said to be handy in a dispute.
They're imported thugs. They're security. It's a private army.
Ninja Turtles, as we call them. They're expert in martial arts.
The company's tactics are ruthless, but then so too are the unions. It's those who just want to get on and earn an honest crust who are hurting most.
Well, being right and being popular is two different things sometimes.
Well, it's the principle, I think, not so much the job. Just got to live with it. You got to do what you think's right, instead of just joining the mob.
We're in a situation where no one's going to win.
Settle down. This blue is not over.
Virginia Hausiger reporting on the industrial relations war in Burnie. Next up.
At the moment, it's certainly a lot quieter than it has been. The picketers are starting to build up behind me now. About, I suppose, 10 minutes ago, there was hardly anyone here. The place was like a ghost town. But gradually the numbers are starting to build up because there's another conflagration extended later on tonight at about 11 o'clock when another shift is expected to try and get through. It's been quite incredible during the day watching the determination and the fire in the bellies of these picketers gradually build, because from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock, what's happened has actually strengthened their resolve. But I mean, as I said to you a minute ago, you know, it's a bit like a ghost town here at the moment, but it certainly wasn't like that at all earlier today.
All right, Mike, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
All right, link arms, guys.
Before the sun rose, police were out in force.
I'm asking the picket line to move to one side and allow these men to go through.
Please listen to me. I don't want any of the women that get hurt. They're not as strong as men. It doesn't matter to me if I get a punch in the face. I don't care.
It's absolutely disgusting to even allow these people in our state, let alone come here to destroy us. All we are as workers, and all we want is a fair go with the company. We're willing to get in there and work hard.
Got the right to work, and we should be able to go to work. That's all I can say.
They talk about intimidation. The company intimidating us. Those guys over there intimidated us this morning.
Who made you go over to the line?
Bloody ridiculous. I've been here 12 years, been out of come and go as I like, and now this has happened. It'll never be able to be the same again.
All right, fellas, remember there's about 15 scabs over there that are going to have you arrested.
People aren't placed under arrest. You go peacefully.
They just simply overwhelmed us at 7 o'clock with the weight of numbers. But there's no violence really amongst that. It was just a lot of pushing and shoving, and their combined weight was too much.
No, we didn't get anyone through. They were the day workers.
And you won't get anyone through, so
It's a democratic country. If you believe in what you believe, you should be allowed to go to work. If they believe in what they are, right, I've got great respect for them. But when you're trying to get into work, there should be no hassle or this sort of thing at all.
Having failed to get anyone inside the APPM mill for the 7 o'clock shift, at 8 o'clock, the day workers had their go.
Well, we've always kept it totally peaceful, and we will continue to do that. It will only be the company that will force that issue. And I find it rather interesting that even on the occasion when we offered to allow the people through, which we did, that the company refused to then bring them through. Clearly the company is saying that they want the people brought through with violence.
No, we'll try again tomorrow, though. I will. I'll try every day for the next, whenever work's available. Come in.
We've got to get back to work. We've got wives and families to support. We want work when it's there. Why should we be deprived of it?
What we usually do is stop the blokes as usual and talk to them and ask them not to cross the picket line, but these blokes never even slowed down. Well, I got hit with a mirror as we were going through, and Con's got hit in the leg, I think, so, and they never stopped or anything. So.
Con's just got a low charges.
Has he? Yeah. So, you know, there's no need to go through that fast. I mean, they only have to, as usual, just stop and talk to us.
But we all knew that the big push was due at 3 o'clock. Police struck with a flying wedge. The picketers responded. Passive resistance was their best form of defence.
Let him go! I never said your word, I said draw blokes! Hey! No, we know that. We know that. There's no need to pull the women by the bloody hair and reef it out.
They got it non-violence, mate. Look at I got it. We're just sitting here up with these blokes. Hey?
This is what Ray Dream wants. Non-violence.
Let's go. Back on the line.
What were you feeling as those police were going through the pickets? You?
I felt rather sad that police had to get into this mob of picketers and start physically removing them because of a dispute that's still escalating between unions and the mill management.
Do police want to do this?
No, of course not. We don't like this kind of violence, and we really can't understand it. But nevertheless, it's our job to move workers through if they want to move through.
How many workers did you get through today?
About 20.
Is it worth it?
In terms of an exercise in police officers being deployed on one scene, I don't think so.
Now, surely this is going to incite violence amongst the picketers.
There's been no violence from our security people at all on the site.
Well, it's like all industrial disputes will end by people going back to work and work going on as normal. All I can hope is that the dispute can be brought to an end as soon as possible.
Yeah, you did well. Well done. Well done.
And now we're crossing back to Mike Swinson in Burnie. Well, Mike, what was the attitude today of the picketers to the police?
Judy, it's been remarkable during the day that there's been I don't know, it's hard to describe how the men have managed to get on with the police. I mean, as Inspector Fox has gone out of his way, it seems to me, to keep his men under control, and the picket captains and the union leaders have also gone out of their way, as we heard from Shane Murphy, to keep their men non-violent. And it's been remarkable during the day at the back of the picket line, even when the scuffles are on, to hear the conversations that have gone on and the sort of conversations that have gone on between police and between the picketers.
Like what? Like what?
Why is that?
No, like, what sort of thing has been said?
Well, I mean, you hear people talking to one another using first names. It's, listen, Roy, what about this? I guess it's something that comes from living in a small town, in a small community, where you're dealing with people you know. And, you know, there were police today who told me that they were sick in the stomach at what they had to do, but they had a job to do. And I think the unionists on the picket line realised that, and that's why you had that passive resistance, particularly at 3 o'clock when the three front rows of that picket line just promptly sat themselves on the ground and let the police do their job. But at times it got a bit out of hand.
How then is the presence of the so-called Ninja Turtle security guards, what sort of role is that playing? You know, is it as sinister as it's portrayed?
Well, the impact of that is that you have men inside the plant who the picketers believe represent some form of violence towards them. They don't know who they are, they don't know where they come from. There are suggestions that some of these men have been involved in disputes on the mainland, like the Vista dispute. But, I mean, word about what they might carry. I mean, there were suggestions this morning that these men were carrying weapons of some sort of ninja weapons. Spreads around this place like wildfire, and you can imagine the impact that has on picketers where tensions are already running high, and where there's a suggestion, as it has been from Michael Field tonight, that the company's hired thugs.
So you're saying that it has had an effect on the resolve of the workers to stay put?
Oh, Judy, absolutely. It's put absolute fire in the bellies of those people here. I mean, you just see the grit and determination on their faces. You see the impact when the police came at 3 o'clock in their flying wedge to try and get through. I mean, it's really quite amazing.
All right, Mike Swinson, thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye. It's taken a big logistical effort to build a police force in Burnie to cope with the situation. Less than a week after telling the Supreme Court there weren't enough police at the scene to challenge the picketers, today it was all on. And the scene's now set for more than just an industrial dispute. Now the APPM arguments could escalate into a campaign of civil disobedience. And do the police have the numbers to cope with that? Rod Wallace reports.
Back in 1982, police came from everywhere when the Gordon below Franklin blockade began. That show of civil disobedience was met with a wall of blue uniforms. How times change. Our police told the Supreme Court they didn't have the numbers to handle this situation. It was a statement the judge yesterday found truly frightening. But the Police Association says, like it or not, that's the way it is these days.
That was one of the factors that was taken into consideration in the strategy and the tactics for dealing with that incident at Burnie.
Right now, police numbers stand at 967 in Tasmania, just 967, excluding cadets. The Libs have promised we'll have 1,040 policemen, but that's going to take years to happen. In the meantime...
The other night, there was three people available for the streets of Hobart. Now, I mean, the authorised strength is probably closer to 9. And you repeat that across the shifts, and the problem is very obvious.
At Burnie, police are being brought in from wherever they can be spared. But that means other police work has to be neglected.
A police officer can only be in one place at a time. So if you commit your resources to one particular incident or to one function, then they are not available to go anywhere else.
And on top of the shortcomings the APPM situation have exposed, the Police Association says Cabinet has just decided it'll put police back on court duty, overturning one of the few Labor decisions the police applauded.
Quite frankly, it is an appalling, stupid decision that they've made to have them open doors for the magistrates, to have them call witnesses, and to stand around in case something happens, then fine. I think that they stand indicted in their management of the Tasmania Police to have them used in that fashion instead of being available for mother of three at Belrive.
And it will be something that it's been suggested, I realise. However, I think that we need police in contact with the community. Now, this again was our clear election commitment to community policing. That is, police in contact with people, and that's quite strongly my view.
And the government also rejects suggestions that police numbers aren't up to scratch.
Well, yes, I believe that while there has had to be some extra police provided, that there are the community is still being well served by its police force. However, let me say that the government believes that we are in need of more police. We said this before the election, and that's why we made such a strong commitment to increase police numbers.
But the numbers haven't increased yet. And with Burnie on the boil, the Police Association says looking at the policing problem purely in terms of costs just doesn't work.
No, it's not good enough. The cost is, I think, unacceptably high, and that's cost in dollar terms, in social terms, in Burnie. When you think that resolution could have been achieved, the best minds in Australia have attempted to find resolution, and we're now down to street brawling. What does it say for the future? You can't sort of see anything very positive out of it. There are no winners.
Oh, incidentally, the Police Association, which has suddenly found itself representing the meat in this industrial sandwich, has pledged $10,000 to the Picketers' Strike Fund. That's solidarity.
Disputes could be in sight later tonight, and within 2 years, Hobart to get a new $8 million hotel. Good evening, I'm Tom Payne. North Broken Hill and union officials are tonight in private talks in Melbourne aimed at resolving the volatile APPM dispute. The Compulsory Industrial Relations Conference adjourned a short time ago to allow the parties to continue negotiations. The conference will resume at 9 o'clock. But meanwhile, pickets remain in force around the Burnie paper mill.
Fearing a repeat of yesterday afternoon's violent clashes, APPM last night eased tensions. Employees advised not to attempt to cross picket lines. That claimed as a victory by striking workers, who again turned out in force at the main gate, defiant as ever. Police were among several hundred spectators, their numbers boosted during the night by reinforcements from across the north.
Yesterday was perhaps a lead into what might happen if it continues.
But it was a relaxed atmosphere on the pickets today. This afternoon's Compulsory Industrial Relations Commission conference in Melbourne providing hope of a settlement. Adding to that, confirmation the company has yet to formally sack those on strike. It may now even review its position. Mr. Henderson says the company will not ask employees to return to work in the current climate. The small numbers shepherded through the gate yesterday were reportedly traumatised and have been offered specialist counselling.
Anyone who's been involved in this operation here to see what happened yesterday could only feel pretty shattered by the whole experience.
He also hit back at claims APPM provoked picketers by hiring interstate security guards trained in martial arts who allegedly also have criminal records. He says the violence was sparked by picketers themselves and welcome calls for an inquiry in what is looming as another major issue in the dispute.
Out here on the picket yesterday we had
People, blow-ins from out of town with spurs on their boots, with pliers to grab the police if they attempted to arrest a person. Someone ought to be investigating what the credentials are of some of the picketers.
APPM also reacted angrily to a veiled threat from Federal Resources Minister Alan Griffiths today that if he found the company acted improperly in hiring security personnel, its export licences may be under threat.
That doesn't aid to the resolution of this dispute at all. And I think Minister Griffiths is a very responsible minister. He's been a great supporter of the forest industries over the last few years. And it's disappointing he didn't bother to ring and just check a couple of his facts with us first.
Although the events over the past 24 hours have further strained relations between the warring parties, ACTU President Martin Ferguson this morning began another round of secret talks with company officials in a bid to reach a settlement. Although no agreement has been made, he was optimistic that at least some ground had been made before the start of the compulsory conference.
At least those discussions are of substance. I'm not in a position to say any more at this point, because I think it's important that we continue to seek to resolve these matters through dialogue.
Not so talkative before this afternoon's meeting, North Broken Hill Managing Director Peter Way.
No comment.
After meeting for less than an hour, the conference adjourned a short time ago to allow further private talks between company executives and union officials. Mr Ferguson said the meeting had not broken down, but had been adjourned at the request of both parties. Talks will resume at 9 o'clock tonight, while in Burnie, striking workers are bracing themselves for another cold night on the pickets.
Tonight, a quiet day in Burnie, but another round of crucial talks. Canberra launches an inquiry into credit card rates, and John Elliott returns in a fighting mood. Good evening, Rosemary Church with ABC News. Some optimistic signs in the APPM dispute tonight as the parties are at least talking again. But there are mixed signals on the talks. The company has delayed further sackings, but there are reports that the unions are trying to push it further. This afternoon's compulsory conference before the Industrial Relations Commission in Melbourne has been adjourned for private talks and is due to resume at 9 o'clock tonight. And the federal government has turned up the heat on APPM.
Yesterday's boil-over at the Burnie mill prompted the federal government to move quickly. Again backed by the Tasmanian government, it formally entered the dispute for the first time via the Industrial Relations Commission. Despite a late start to this afternoon's compulsory conference, the unions at least arrived with some optimism.
Whilst there is no agreement between the parties at this stage, discussions have been underway since early this morning, and I'm pleased to say at least those discussions are of substance.
Are you feeling optimistic? No comment.
As a concession towards a possible peaceful resolution, APPM has stalled its plan to sack hundreds of workers, still manning the picket lines. But the union movement wants the charges from yesterday's confrontation dropped and every worker back inside without loss of entitlements before it'll consider a return to work. Earlier, Federal Resources Minister Alan Griffiths issued a clear warning to the company.
I will not countenance behaviour that's inconsistent with the national interest, and in those circumstances they'd want to have a very serious think about the future of their operations, at least insofar as I'm concerned.
Mr Griffiths says he has a legal obligation under the export control regulations to take into account APPM's commercial reputation when it applies for renewal of its export wood chip licence.
It's not a threat. Under the law, I am required to take account of a company's commercial behaviour.
In particular, Alan Griffiths is concerned about the interstate security guards, the so-called Ninja Turtles, and the suggestion they were simply hired thugs. APPM denies allegations of thuggery, but says nevertheless the guards have been sent back to Sydney.
Tonight's manoeuvrings in the Commission are a direct result of yesterday's violent confrontation. The clashes and arrests brought to an abrupt end 25 days of an uneasy truce between the company and its workforce. Today, the city of Burnie reflected on the aftermath.
Yesterday's unparalleled scenes outside the Burnie paper mill did what 3 weeks of union pickets had been unable to do. Almost immediately, APPM softened its stand, telling police it no longer expected strikebreakers to go to work under such strain. The 20 who breached the line were sent home a few hours later. By morning, their pickets still in place, the strikers' resolve had only been hardened by the clash.
People aren't getting sucked in anymore by APPM. I would say that 80 to 90% of the community were on our side.
We're not in this to have a brawl, and when you've got hired in union officials, other people from all over Tasmania, from the west coast, as I said, armed with spurs, other weapons, pliers and the like, they're obviously not there for a Sunday school picnic.
Less than 100 out of 1,000 employees have so far signed up for work. This afternoon, the big picket-breaking police contingent was sent home when no one fronted outside the main gate. 24 hours on, and there's none of the anger and emotion that prompted yesterday's confrontation. But locals say it's changed the community forever.
Never be the same ever again. Never. Can't even walk up the street without people looking, you know, bad at you.
I feel that it's every worker's right to go back to work if he wants to.
It's definitely got to split people. You know, friends won't be friends from now on, I think.
I think they should just play their game or go back to work and let them argue in the arbitration.
But from the Chief of Police, a word of warning.
Quite honestly, I think it can get worse than that. Yesterday was perhaps...
It's a Burnie paper mill dispute. The talks between the ACTU and APPM began again at midday with no sign yet of a breakthrough. The dispute has now spread interstate, with the Transport Workers Union today threatening to bring APPM's operations to a standstill around the country.
The compulsory conference in the Industrial Relations Commission resumed at midday, the latest bid to bring the 26-day-old strike to an end.
Are you any closer to a resolution?
We're still working at it.
Are you any closer?
We're still working at it, that's all I can say.
Despite a series of private talks between North Broken Hill executives and union officials over the past 24 hours, no agreement was reached overnight, which would result in a return to work. Meanwhile, pressure continues to mount on the company industrially and politically. Prime Minister Paul Keating, addressing today's New South Wales State ALP conference, used the Burnie dispute to attack the coalition's industrial policy.
There's only one thing to be gained from the dispute in Burnie. It has exposed the philosophy of John Hewson and John Howard and has given Australians a glimpse of what life would be like under a Conservative government.
Federal Resources Minister Alan Griffiths also weighed in with further criticism of the APPM style of management.
I would have to say they're not the stars of corporate Australia. In terms of intellectual horsepower, I've always considered them a couple of Clydesdales short of a team.
The Transport Workers Union, in the meantime, has emerged as a major player in the long-running dispute. The row has now spread interstate, the TWU banning the movement of paper products from the company's South Oakley warehouse in Melbourne, its major Victorian distribution centre. Unionists believe this dispute is unwinnable without the Transport Workers Union, its action in Victoria only the beginning of a strategy aimed at crippling APPM's operations around the country.
Everybody wants to get back to work, but when one's in a dispute of this nature, one has got to take backup measures, and that's what the Transport Workers Union is doing by extending the dispute to the mainland.
Maritime unions met today and are expected to join the fight against APPM. If the standoff continues, the company's imports and exports are likely to be targeted. That could eventually also bring its wood chip business to a standstill. Key union officials are not optimistic the compulsory conference in Melbourne will result in a return to work. The earliest that would occur is Tuesday, when ACTU President Martin Ferguson is due to return to Burnie for another meeting of the rank and file.
I don't think that'll happen by Tuesday. If it does and common sense prevails, that's great, but I don't think that'll happen. I think they're dug in too deeply. As I've said many times, they're one of the most ruthless companies I've ever dealt with, and it wouldn't be surprised to me what they did.
Striking workers manning pickets around the Burnie site expect a quiet weekend after the company's decision yesterday not to encourage those who want to return to work to cross picket lines following Thursday's violent clashes at the mill's main gate. Police, however, intend to maintain a presence at the normal change of shifts, but the numbers will be substantially reduced.
Tonight, talks in Melbourne achieve a breakthrough in the APPM dispute.
Common sense has finally prevailed because people were finally prepared to talk to one another.
And Graham Richardson refuses a tilt at the ALP presidency. Good evening, Kay Wilkinson with ABC News. A breakthrough tonight in the Burnie APPM dispute after 2 days of intense talks in Melbourne. The Industrial Commission-sponsored talks have ended, with the ACTU ready to recommend a return to work at a mass meeting on Tuesday. Details of settlement are yet to be finalised and will be kept secret until Tuesday's meeting. From Burnie, Andrew Fisher reports those on the picket line are reacting cautiously until they see the fine print.
The first indication a breakthrough was on the way came last night. Symbolically, union head Martin Ferguson and company boss Peter Wade addressed the media together after all-day negotiations.
Well, Peter Wade and I are here together. Isn't that a statement about where we're at?
Today, on a picket line thinned out after informal agreement that no one would attempt to get to work, the consensus was that this time was the right time for a return to work.
They seem to be fairly confident at this stage. They're saying things are progressing and all that, so hopefully they are. But
we're all hopeful, mate, that something does come good out of those meetings in Melbourne, yeah.
It's going to have to resume work this week, I'm pretty sure of that.
This afternoon, the picket lines and the police lines were boosted just in case anyone turned up for work. No one did. But in Melbourne came the breakthrough. Agreement for a framework for a settlement.
It is a victory for common sense. I've always said no one wins in an industrial dispute. Common sense has finally prevailed because people were finally prepared to talk to one another.
Well, we've got a potential outcome which could result in an end of the disputes.
After starting the latest round of talks, the federal government took some of the credit for the outcome.
We're very pleased that events have reached this stage. We hope this leads to a settlement and a return to work.
But what is uncertain is just what the deal involves. The company has retained all its legal rights, which could include appealing the Industrial Commission interim award and even suing union leaders for damages arising from the dispute. Until now, they had been the major sticking points. After the enormous political interest in the dispute, Peter Wade made it clear a settlement may have come quicker without it.
One of the major stumbling blocks has been the unhelpful comments from political parties and politicians. We felt
the ACTU will recommend the return to work at a meeting in Burnie on Tuesday.
A mass meeting of APPM workers tomorrow, and the nation's best honoured in the Queen's Birthday Awards. Good evening, I'm Tom Payne. All's quiet tonight at the Burnie picket line on the eve of a crucial vote which promises to end the paper mill dispute. Most workers, though, are at best cautious about the ACTU's secret plan with the company. Indeed, some predict it will fail.
For Burnie, tomorrow brings the best chance yet of an end to the near-month-long strike in the city's industrial heart. Morning papers bannered APPM's deal with the union movement. The optimism, though, hadn't penetrated the picket line. Here, they remain suspicious of APPM after the failure of the last peace plan.
Their interpretation last time was entirely different to ours, and they backed out on the deal at the last minute.
In Melbourne yesterday, the end of 29 hours negotiations. North Broken Hill's Peter Wade admitting that a potential outcome had been achieved. ACTU President Martin Ferguson, clearly happy, said he would recommend a return to work. He'll put that to a mass meeting of the 800 striking workers in Burnie tomorrow afternoon.
Well, I don't think you'd put a statement over the TV like that, you know, to go right through the media if there wasn't something in it.
Others, though, insist Martin Ferguson's enthusiasm doesn't guarantee a settlement.
Well, you can't really say from a smile, can you?
This has happened before. We got that far before and it's fell through, so I'm not that optimistic yet.
I'm not confident of the meeting tomorrow.
Sort of an uneasy confidence. You know, people are hopeful that it's going to end, more than confident of it.
And local union officials point to the cautious mood of workers when assessing the likely outcome of tomorrow's vote. They claim the chances of a return to work are still well below 50-50.
Well, I can only relay the feeling on the picket lines, and then it'd probably be about 80-20 at this stage against.
That should change if the peace plan to be delivered by Martin Ferguson tomorrow answers central concerns. Has APPM agreed to withdraw legal action against unions? Is the company now willing to negotiate with unions in the future? What happens to the workers considered by APPM to have abandoned their employment? The union-company deal will need to provide convincing answers if workers are to finally end the Burnie dispute tomorrow.
Pessimism as Burnie waits for a vital vote. Another setback for Labor's New South Wales right wing, and the UN closer to further intervention in Bosnia. Good evening, Rosemary Church with ABC News. There's an air of pessimism on the Burnie picket line, despite the prospect of a return to work tomorrow. Strikers say they want to see the contents of a secret deal worked out between the ACTU and APPM before building up hopes of an end to the dispute.
It's been a low-key day in Burnie, those manning the picket line erecting a Christmas tree, symbolising their determination to outlast APPM.
Oh yeah, if there's not a settlement, we're prepared to stay till Christmas or whenever.
A surprising attitude, considering the ACTU will recommend a return to work at a mass meeting tomorrow. But there's a mood of pessimism on the picket lines. They just don't trust the company.
We've had these peace plans before and they've been reneged on half an hour before the crunch time.
How can you trust a company that's lied and cheated and brought in Ninja Turtles, quote, hitmen from the other side of this island to bash their own work people?
The use of police to break the picket line has strengthened strikers' resolve not to return to work until all the issues that have caused the last 2 months of turmoil are solved. With the agreement still secret, many strikers are suspicious of its contents. That's why union leaders are playing down the chance of a return to work.
They want to be clear that whatever they agreed to is exactly what the company has said they'll agree to.
Everyone's experience in this dispute has been that our hopes have been raised several times, only to be dashed a day or so later. So we want to make sure that everyone understands what's being put and it is accepted by the rank and file. Because
ACTU President Martin Ferguson will fly into Burnie tomorrow to detail a settlement and recommend an end to the dispute.
Tonight, the picket lines come down outside the Burnie paper mill. Barry Jones set to take on the ALP presidency, and price relief for buyers of recorded music. Good evening, Rosemary Church with ABC News. Burnie has begun counting the cost of the bitter APPM dispute. The 800 workers are set to start walking through the gates again with the first shift tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. Although the settlement deal is now in place, many are still pessimistic about the long-term prospects.
Once a symbol of union protest, the dismantling of this picketers' camp outside the main gate today was the clearest indication the protracted stoppage is over. Their return to work deal in place, the unions cleared pickets across a dozen entrances to the plant, but not before a last-minute hitch involving log hauliers again threatened to derail the settlement.
Voted to go back and what happened? We're out again.
With the transport question since resolved, the ACTU and North Broken Hill are set to conclude the deal tomorrow, once employees report for work. Down more than $10 million in lost production, APPM wants lasting industrial peace so it can make paper, not close down.
And I think in the last 2 months, this company, if it wanted to close the business down, has had several opportunities and it could have saved itself a hell of a lot of pain and cost by doing that. And we wouldn't have sought to get a peace settlement in the way it was achieved if we'd really wanted to shut the business down.
To cope with conflict in its ranks, the company has a team of 16 councillors ready from the first shift.
In the initial stages, we recognise deep divisions that exist and we need to bridge those divisions.
Most of that centres on last week's graphic evidence of the split in worker opinion about going to work during a strike. Today, with all the pickets packed away, this twisted frame is the only visible reminder of that dramatic incident. But for the community of Burnie, the memories will remain.
I think some people feel so lost in all of this, maybe hurt. They go so far as to think of perhaps contemplating suicide, and they think, how can I ever think of this? They're devastated at that thought. And that leads then, who do they share it with? And so, but maybe that thought stays with them, and we would encourage them to contact Lifeline and talk it out.
With the first of the striking workers due back before sunrise tomorrow, the plant is scheduled to restart operations by the weekend.
The program. During the past 4.5 years, we've covered around 4,000 stories, everything from major investigations to the rise and fall of political and business leaders, to the triumphs and disasters of a world in upheaval. There are so many stories, it's impossible to list them all, but tonight we'll look back at just some of the images that have made a lasting impression. Let's start at the beginning.